Chapter 1355. Excuse me, I also want to exchange for a dimensional pocket. After the old man left, a young man in his 20s walked up to the shop assistant and said, "Let me scan your personal terminal." The shop assistant did not even raise her head. She did not even look at the young man. Her tone was full of disdain. "No problem." The young man obediently handed the personal terminal to the shop assistant. When the shop assistant saw the first line of the scan result, she frowned. Her tone suddenly became playful. "Please pay 2,533 hero coins." The last old man had exchanged for a dimensional pocket at 2,333 hero coins, but the next one had increased to 2,533. That was an extra 200 hero coins. For an ancient sword wielder, 200 hero coins was an amount that could only be earned after a month of hard work. In the blink of an eye, the price had increased by 200. Why? Why do I have to pay 200 more? That person clearly had 2,333 hero coins. Of course, the young man did not want to give up. There was no reason for him to pay an extra 200 hero coins, so he questioned the shop assistant loudly. "What are you arguing about?" When the shop assistant heard the young man's voice, she raised her head and looked at the woman in front of her. She pointed at the birthplace column on the scan result and said coldly, "We are from Yinjing, of course, 2,333 hero coins. But you are from Yuzhong, so the price is different. You have to pay 2,533 hero coins." "Why? So what if I am from Yuzhong?" Hearing the shop assistant's words, the woman became even angrier. The Sword Committee has clearly stated that all merit shops in the world are equal. All swordsmen who enter the shop to exchange merit points have to pay the same price. Why do you have to charge 200 more hero coins to Yuzhong people? The Sword Committee has also stated that Yuan Ko should be exterminated, but why haven't Yuan Ko's all dead yet? Let me tell you, this is Yinjing City's merit exchange shop. The goods provided in this shop are also the hard-earned rewards of Yinjing City's sword bearers. It has nothing to do with you Yuzhong people. You can exchange your merit points in Yuzhong City's shop. Don't come to Yinjing City's shop. Otherwise, you'll have to pay an extra 200 hero coins. I say, are you so poor that you only have 2,333 hero coins? If you don't have money, then please step aside. Don't block the people behind you and waste everyone's time. The waiter continued to mock. "All right, since you want 2,533 hero coins, fine, I'll give you 2,533 hero coins." Hearing the woman's words, the attendant's face suddenly showed a proud expression. He thought to himself, "Aren't you a sword wielder? Aren't you awesome? But you still have to listen to me. I picked up another 200,000 yuan for free today. It's so cool." Since the Sword Committee headquarters had stipulated that all sword bearers would be charged the same price in the merit exchange store, Yinjing certainly could not blatantly violate this rule. In fact, if a Yuzhong person came to Yinjing's merit exchange store, he would be charged the same price of 2,333 hero coins. It was impossible for the government to collect the extra 200 hero coins. To put it bluntly, this was a tip that the staff would deduct, but this tip was not willingly given by the customer. Although the staff in the merit exchange shop had their own ulterior motives, the shop system was indeed perfect and complete. When the waiter processed the exchange through the computer, he could only deduct 2,333 hero coins. It was impossible to deduct 2,533 hero coins. However, any rules could be exploited by someone with a mind. The waiter who had the intention to embezzle 200 hero coins naturally had a corresponding method of cheating. This method of cheating was very simple. When the waiter opened the bill, she only needed to deduct 8 sword mark fragments worth 25 hero coins. The extra 8 sword mark fragments would naturally be put into the waiter's own pocket. If she sold them on the black market to those sword bearers who did not have enough hero coins but had more than enough RMB, she would easily earn 200,000 yuan. It was too fast. This kind of operation was already a piece of cake for the waiter, so she handled it very quickly. In less than a minute, she finished deducting the money. Then, she casually threw a dimensional pocket in front of the female sword bearer and said sarcastically, "Okay, you can go now." So this is the method. It's not a very clever method. The female sword-bearer from Yuzhong City said disdainfully after watching the waiter's operation. There's no need for a clever method. It's fine as long as it works. The waiter continued to mock her. Logically speaking, she should be feeling guilty and afraid when her cheating method was discovered. However, there was no panic on the waiter's face. Instead, she looked fearless. Aren't you afraid that I'll report this to the Sword Committee Association and sue you for corruption? The female sword-bearer said again. Whatever. The waiter laughed even more casually. You can report however you want, but I can remind you that the chief of the Market Supervision Section of the Sword Committee Association is my brother. Do you think he will care about a report from a Yuzhong person like you? At this point, the waiter laughed even more wildly. Some of the sword-bearers around them could not stand it anymore. They took the initiative to pull the female sword-bearer's shoulder and persuade her. Forget it. You're a foreigner. Don't go with her. Her father is the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. I'm sure you understand now. Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, you'll suffer if you continue to pester her. What? You're the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. The female sword-bearer of Yuzhong City was shocked, and her body trembled with fear. Seeing the other party's fear, the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal's woman was naturally very proud. She could make a sword-bearer so afraid that he had been looking forward to becoming a sword-bearer since he was a child. This little girl, who could only rely on her father's authority to work as a waiter in this merit exchange store, felt a kind of perverted pleasure in her heart. So what if you're a sword-bearer? You'll still tremble in fear in front of an ordinary person like me. If you know, then get out of here. You damn Yuzhong person. You shameless Yuzhong person. I'm in a good mood now, so I don't want to bully you. Others will say that I'm bullying you, the waiter said proudly. You. The female sword-bearer stammered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something and was a little angry. She tried to argue. How can you insult me like this? So what if I'm from Yuzhong? Have you forgotten that it was our Yuzhong City's sword immortal Hong Jun who saved so many people from the game? It was our sword immortal Hong Jun who found your Yinjing City's natural sword lady. Our sword immortal Hong Jun has been so kind to your Yinjing City. He has done so many things for you and saved so many people. How can you insult our Yuzhong City? The female sword-bearer actually raised Guhan's flag. Wow, you still have the cheek to mention that *TCH Hongjun. Unexpectedly, once the female sword-bearer mentioned Guhan, the waiter became even angrier. She scolded loudly. Sword Immortal Hongjun is *TCH who kills innocent people indiscriminately. He actually dared to kill so many innocent people on the street. Also, don't think that Sword Immortal Hongjun is indebted to the natural sword lady. It originally belongs to our Yinjing City. It's natural that Sword Immortal Hongjun likes us. If he dares to not return it, our Yinjing City. No, my father alone can beat him until he pees his ass and kneels on the ground to beg for mercy. The waiter's scolding was extremely carefree. She vented all the anger that she had suppressed in her heart for several days. Then, she put her hands on her hips and looked at the female sword-bearer arrogantly. Get out of here. Otherwise, I have ways to make it difficult for you to move an inch in our Yinjing City. By then, even if you bring out your sword Immortal Hongjun, it'll be useless. Even if he's here, we'll have to be as obedient as a dog. Just like how he obediently handed over the natural sword lady of our Yinjing City. You guys don't know this, but when my dad went to ask for the innate sword ladies, that bitch, Sword Immortal Hongjun, actually had the nerve to bargain with my dad for some benefits. In the end, my dad shook his sword chi, and that weakling, Sword Immortal Hongjun, was so scared that he knelt down and sent all the innate sword ladies back with both hands. The waiter thought that after he finished speaking, the female sword-bearer from Yuzhong City would be so scared that she would pee her ass and run away. However, to the waiter's surprise, after the female sword-bearer heard what he said, not only did she withdraw her previous panicked expression, but she even revealed a slightly playful smile. She sat in a corner of the merit exchange store and said to the man wearing a large pair of sunglasses that covered his face, "Hey, did you hear that? You were so scared by the thunder and fire sword immortal that you knelt down and begged for mercy and offered those natural sword ladies with both hands. Yeah. Hearing the woman in front of her, the waiter immediately revealed a puzzled expression. She didn't understand the meaning of this woman's words. She didn't understand, but that didn't mean that the surrounding onlookers didn't. Some of the astute onlookers immediately understood the meaning of this Yuzhong City woman's words. Then, they looked at the man sitting quietly in the corner with slight excitement and fear. Could it be that this man was the man who stirred up the entire Yanjing City? Sai Gahan, who originally wanted to complete the exchange process quietly, stood up helplessly. Since someone had insulted and arranged things to this extent, even if he didn't want to show off, he had to finish showing off. Chapter 1356. You are the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal? Why do I remember that it was not your father who came to me to discuss the Sword Lady, but the great Sun Sword Immortal? The man in sunglasses walked to the side of the shop assistant. Although he was not as tall as a shop assistant in high heels, he gave off a condescending aura, as if this man was a towering mountain. Yes, this man wearing sunglasses and sitting quietly in the corner was, of course, our Gahan, and the female swordsman in Yuzhong City was Guhan's new sword lady, the Victory Sword. At this time, Guhan's appearance had spread throughout the human world. Almost 98% of humans had carefully observed Guhan's photos, and they had to remember Guhan's appearance. As the saying goes, who in the world doesn't know the king? Guhan did not want to cause any more trouble in Yanjing City, so he deliberately disguised himself, put on a big pair of sunglasses, and came to the Merit Exchange store with the Victory Sword, asking the Victory Sword to exchange for the sword scar mark. I don't know if the readers still remember that Gahan used Liu Shihua's authority to create a personal terminal named Gu Shirhan. This terminal could be said to be fake, because Gu Shirhan did not exist. But it could also be said that this personal terminal was real, because all the information in it was also real. It just so happened that the Victory Sword looked exactly the same as Gu Shirhan and Gu Xinyuan, so it was really a good thing to let the Victory Sword pretend to be Gu Shirhan. As for Gahan himself, he quietly sat on the side, holding the line for the Victory Sword. In case the Victory Sword was seen through, he had to come out in time to stop the situation from escalating. However, what Gahan did not expect was that the Victory Sword did not cause him any trouble. Instead, it was the shop assistant who dug her own grave, causing such a thing that Gahan had to come out to deal with. If Guhan didn't deal with this audacious woman who was full of lies, then wouldn't Guhan really have to take the blame for being scared and kneeling by the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal? You are? Who are you? At this time, the shop assistant finally understood what had happened with the Victory Sword. She realized that the man who appeared in front of her at this time was very likely to be the man she had just insulted. Suddenly, her heart almost squeezed together, and her forehead was instantly covered with sweat. Although the shop assistant's words just now were shocking and she had belittled Gahan, this shop assistant was the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. Of course, she knew the truth. She had heard the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal warning his children at home more than once about how terrifying and powerful Gahan was, and Fire Sword Immortal had warned them not to provoke him. He also took the initiative to tell them that this time, under his despotic coercion, Yanjing City had no choice but to agree to let his disciple be the next chairman of the Sword Committee. This was to let his children know the immensity of heaven and earth, and not to provoke this terrifying guy, Gahan. However, the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal did not expect that his words not only did not achieve the effect he had hoped for, but also caused his daughter to hate Gahan from the bottom of her heart. Although this shop assistant was indeed the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal, the problem was that the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal had more than one daughter. The Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal was a famous stud in Yanjing City. He had married 3 wives, and also carefully selected more than 30 exclusive maids to form a huge harem. Moreover, one had to admit that the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal was really fertile. His harem of more than 30 people gave birth to a total of more than 10 sons and more than 20 daughters. Therefore, Other than the children of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortals' three most beloved wives, the other children of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortals' personal maidservants had no status in the family and were not favored by the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. In a month, the number of words this attendant spoke to her father alone did not exceed 5. From this, it could be seen that she was not valued. Otherwise, she would not have been casually sent to this merit exchange store to work as an attendant. One had to know that the children who were truly favored by the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal had long entered the Sword Committee and become leaders of some departments with real power. Although this merit exchange store was a department with a lot of profits, it did not have any political status. It was just a place for useless people to retire. It was precisely because of this that the waitress was so brazen in making money. She knew in her heart that sooner or later, she would have to be independent. She couldn't get too many benefits from her father. The only way to go was to save enough RMB. Thinking that a person from Yuzhong would become the chairman of the Sword Committee, and her good business of deducting foreign hero coins would be forcibly stopped, this shop assistant was furious. Recently, her expression had been particularly ugly. She hated Gahan, who had ruined her plan, to the bone. That was why she was so angry at Gahan just now. This shop assistant had thought that Gahan would never know what had happened today. She did not expect that the Hong Jun Sword Immortal would actually appear in front of her. "Hello, I'm Gahan." Guhan took off his sunglasses, and then the entire merit exchange shop fell silent. The face that was firmly remembered by everyone in Yanjing City caused all the onlookers to be so scared that they didn't dare to say another word. Everyone had heard the shop assistant's insult towards Sword Immortal Hong Jun just now. Presumably, this Sword Immortal Hong Jun's brain was filled with rage right now. This Sword Immortal Hong Jun was not a nice old man who always had a smile on his face. Instead, he was an immortal sword-level swordsman who could kill thousands of people in an instant and did not care about human lives. If they accidentally said something wrong at this time, wouldn't they be implicated? Therefore, the onlookers naturally did not dare to say another word. At the same time, they looked at the shop assistant with great sympathy, thinking that she was going to be in trouble. Even if she was the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal, she would probably be beaten up. In fact, this shop assistant thought so too. The moment Gahan took off his sunglasses, she was so scared that her face turned pale. Her legs were trembling, and her high heels were like a vibrating motor that kept hitting the ground, making continuous rapid sounds. "Hello, I want to exchange for the sword mark imprint," Guhan said lightly, without any angry expression on his face. At the same time, he transferred his hero coin back from Gu Shirhan's personal terminal, and, at the same time, handed his personal terminal to the shop assistant. Okay. The shop assistant barely lifted her trembling hands and scanned Gohan's personal terminal. Name, Gohan, identity, sword wielder, grade, immortal sword level, and so on clearly appeared in front of the shop assistant. Gohan's identity had become confirmed. Her legs were completely frightened, and she collapsed on the ground, unable to stand up again. "Stand up. I want to exchange for the sword mark imprint." Seeing the shop assistant fall, Guhan said expressionlessly, "Why doesn't this sword deity, Hong Jun, retaliate against me? He looks quite normal. Doesn't he mind what I said just now?" Seeing that there was no anger on Guhan's face, the waiter felt a little lucky and thought to himself, "That's right, he's a world-famous immortal sword wielder. He's a big shot who cares about his reputation and has to be magnanimous. Maybe he won't attack me in public. As long as I serve him well, I might be able to escape this disaster." Thinking of this, the shop assistant immediately stood up and asked Gahan with a smile, "Dear sword deity Hong Jun, how many sword mark imprints do you want? I'll get it for you now. Give me 60 sets. Gahan still said lightly, "Okay, 60 sets. Speaking of this, the shop assistant's face became stiff in an instant. After a long time, she could not help but confirm with Gahan, "Dear sword deity Hong Jun, do you want to exchange for 60 sets of sword mark imprints? From the sword mark dust to the sword mark godstone. You want 60 sets of all of them?" "That's right." Gahan nodded, Then his expression changed. He asked unhappily, "Why? Don't you have 60 sets of sword mark imprints in the Yanjing City Merit store?" "Yes, yes." The shop assistant saw Gahan's expression change and quickly said. Then, she quickly tapped on the machine a few times and said tentatively, "Dear sword deity Hong Jun, 60 sets are worth a total of 29259,360 hero coins. Do you think you can pay so many hero coins in one go? You can just pay the bill." Gohan touched his personal terminal on the cash register, and the cash register directly showed the number of hero coins left on Gohan's personal terminal. No more, no less, just over 30 million hero coins. "I'll go get it for you now." Seeing that he had enough hero coins, the shop assistant immediately ran away from the counter and entered the warehouse at the back. She used her fastest speed to get the 60 sets of sword mark imprints for Gahan. Damn, how many missions did this sword deity, Hong Jun, do? Why does he have so many hero coins? Even if I live 100 more lives, I won't be able to save so many hero coins. At this time, the onlookers finally could not help but start whispering. They were completely shocked by Gohan's huge amount of hero coins. Are you stupid? Sword deity Hong Jun is a swordsman who saved so many human souls. It's not too much to reward him with 30 million hero coins in one go. Another onlooker said disapprovingly. They did not know that the reward from the sword committee was only 10 million hero coins. The other 10 million was the reward from the Yanjing City Sword Committee. As for the remaining 10 million, it was the hero coins that Gohan had saved in the 3 years in Shanghai Pass. After all, Gohan had led the swordsmen to kill all the Wu people. It was normal for him to save so many hero coins. Sword deity Hong Jun, your things are all here. The shop assistant ran back with a dimensional box. Seeing that she had increased her speed to the maximum, her clothes were completely drenched in sweat, revealing her beautiful figure. At the same time, the shop assistant looked at Gahan expectantly and begged for mercy, hoping that Gahan would be magnanimous and let her go. However, would Gahan really let go of this waiter who was full of shit? Chapter 1357. Gohan glanced at the sword mark imprints that the attendant had given him and realized that everything was correct. All 60 sets of sword mark imprints were here. Everything is good. You're good too. Gohan nodded in satisfaction and said to the sweating attendant, "No way. Sword Immortal Hong Jun praised me." The waiter was overwhelmed by the favor. She had never thought that Gohan would actually praise her. "Master Sword Immortal Hong Jun, you're too kind. As long as Master Sword Immortal Hong Jun doesn't mind my unintentional mistake, I'll be grateful and dare not accept Sword Immortal Hong Jun's praise." The attendant said obediently and humbly. If she had been as humble as she was now, she would not be in such a predicament. "No, I'm not praising you. You're really good. I like you. What's your name?" The attendant had not expected to hear such a sentence from Gahan. She could not believe that Sword Immortal Hong Jun liked her. Could it be that her natural beauty and beautiful appearance had finally been discovered by someone, and this Sword Immortal Hong Jun had fallen in love with her? This was not her delusion. It could very well be true. Otherwise, why didn't Sword Immortal Hong Jun blame him at all when he insulted Sword Immortal Hong Jun just now? Instead, Sword Immortal Hong Jun was so calm and elegant, showing off his elegant side, just to attract his attention. Thinking of this, the waiter's entire body became excited. In her mind, she even began to imagine herself marrying Gohan. From then on, a chicken would become a phoenix. She would no longer be the concubine's daughter who was despised by her siblings at home, but a noble that even her own father had to carefully serve. Although the attendant did not know how strong Gahan was, Thunder Fire Sword Immortal had warned her children more than once that there was a 99% chance that Gohan would become an Emperor Sword wielder in the future. Moreover, Gahan was still so young. He might be able to dominate humanity for more than 50 years. As long as there's a 1% chance, I must find a way to become Sword Immortal Hong Jun's woman and win his love. In the blink of an eye, the waiter's thoughts had turned into a ridiculous one. "My name is Lei Wanru. After Lei Wanru finished speaking, she gave Gahan a shy smile. So it's Miss Lei Wanru. Gahan smiled and nodded, then said, Miss Lei Wanru, I have high hopes for you. I wonder if you would be willing to join my family and come in my home? It's coming. Sword Immortal Hong Jun really likes me. I'm about to suffocate. He actually really likes me and wants me to become his woman and join his family. Oh my god. How could Sword Immortal Hong Jun be so direct? I wasn't mentally prepared at all. I'm about to suffocate. Hearing Gahan's words, Lei Wanru's little heart was about to explode. She was so excited that she felt a little dizzy. She only felt that her blood was gushing out through her skin. Miss Lei Wanru, please give me a reply. Are you willing to join my family? After waiting for a minute or two, Gahan asked impatiently again. How should I answer? Should I be a little more reserved? A girl shouldn't take the initiative to agree to such a thing, even though he is Sword Immortal Hong Jun. Lei Wanru thought to herself. She opened her mouth with difficulty and said, That's not good. It's a little too fast. I'm not mentally prepared at all. Oh. Gahan nodded, then shook his head regretfully. It turns out that Miss Lei Wanru isn't willing to join my family. It seems that I was rash. In that case, just pretend that I didn't make such a request. Goodbye. After saying this, Gahan was ready to leave the merit exchange store. Seeing Gahan turn around, Lei Wanru's heart was about to break down. Was what she said so easily misunderstood? Even a fool would be able to tell that she was trying to reject him. Why did he leave so easily? At that moment, Lei Wanru's remaining intelligence was not enough for her to figure out the meaning behind Gahan's series of actions. No matter what, she could not miss this opportunity to become a phoenix. Therefore, at that moment, Lei Wanru threw away her last bit of reservation and shouted at Gahan's back, Don't go. I'm willing. Oh. Gahan turned around suavely and faced Lei Wanru again. He smiled and confirmed, Miss Lei Wanru, are you really willing to join my family? I'm willing. This time, Lei Wanru quickly nodded and admitted. It was such a good opportunity. Once she missed it, there would definitely not be a next time. Damn, isn't this change a little too fast? Looking at the plot, that was like a third-rate Mary Sue romantic comedy. The onlookers felt that their brains were not enough to process it. Why was this girl scolding Gahan just a second ago, and then willing to become Sword Immortal Hong Jun's woman the next second? Moreover, Sword Immortal Hong Jun did not use his identity to force anything from the beginning to the end. Wasn't this Lei Wanru a little too cheap? And what was going on with that Gahan? The dignified Sword Immortal Hong Jun did not have any reaction when he heard someone scolding him like that. Instead, he fell in love with this woman. Wasn't this a melodramatic plot that only appeared in third-rate Mary Sue romantic comedies? How could such a plot actually happen in reality? If such a plot was really possible, then she would specially block the door of those sword bearers and scold them. Then, she would see if she could also become a phoenix. The onlookers were shocked by the astonishing change in Lei Wanru's attitude in less than 10 minutes. They could not understand why a woman who was scolding the other party a second ago would want to stick to the other party in the next second. This was because the onlookers' common sense was not enough. Although Lei Wanru was scolding Gahan just now, she was just like those ordinary people who scolded corrupt officials. Once this ordinary person became an official one day, he was afraid that he would be even more corrupt than the previous corrupt officials. In fact, the harsher the ordinary people scolded the corrupt officials, the more corrupt they would be when they became officials. This was because they had a lot of desires in their hearts, and when these desires could not be satisfied, they could only curse those people and positions that they dreamed of. Miss Wanru, let me confirm with you one last time. Are you really willing to let go of everything that you have now, give up your position in Yanjing City's Mare Exchange store, join my family, and become a member of my family? Gahan confirmed with Lei Wanru for the third time. I am willing. Lei Wanru's answer was even more determined. Very good. Gahan smiled and nodded, then took out his personal terminal, dialed a number, and asked in front of Lei Wanru, Hello, is this Yanjing City's exclusive maid training academy? What? His communication is to the exclusive maid training academy? Why would he call that kind of despicable place? Guhan's words made Lei Wanru stunned. Her brain had not figured out why Guhan wanted to call the exclusive maid training academy, but she instinctively had an ominous premonition. It's like this. I have a young girl who is willing to be my exclusive maid here. I hope that I can entrust your Yanjing City's exclusive maid training academy to carry out 3 years of maid training. Is that okay? What do you mean by a professional maid? What professional exclusive maid do you have? Service department and home economics department. No, no, no. I don't need a maid in the service department. My family only lacks an exclusive maid to clean, wash, and cook. Then I'll take an exclusive maid in the home economics department. Register my identity? My name is Gahan, and my sword wielder is at the immortal sword tier. I'm sword immortal Hong Jun. What? You're sending someone to accept this exclusive maid into school now? Isn't that too inconvenient? All right, I'm at the merit exchange store in the core area now. You could just send someone over directly. Don't worry, I've personally confirmed with this lady 3 times. She's agreed. Everyone around can testify for me. I didn't do anything to force her. She's completely willing. All right, it's settled then. I'll wait for you at the merit exchange store. All right. Gahan hung up the communication. All the smiles disappeared, and he regained his cold expression. He said to Lei Wanru, All right, Miss Lei Wanru, welcome to my family. From today onwards, you're my exclusive maid. Exclusive maid? Lei Wanru took a few steps back weakly and fell on her butt. Her hair was scattered in an instant, and she looked like a female ghost. No matter how confused she was, she had heard Gahan's conversation clearly. This was what Gahan meant when he asked her to join his family. He actually wanted her to be his exclusive maid, such a lowly position. Moreover, to be the exclusive maid of the home economics department, which was even more lowly and despairing. Was her future going to be wasted in those endless pots and pans? You're taking revenge on me. You're taking revenge on me. At this moment, Lei Wanru understood one step further. This Gahan had not forgiven her at all. He had only lured her into a trap. He wanted to use a lowly maid to deeply humiliate her character. He was a demon, and she had actually foolishly thought that he had slept with her. No, she could not accept such an ending. No, I won't do it. I don't want to be some King exclusive maid. Lei Wanru stood up from the ground and ran toward the backstage of the merit exchange store. She wanted to escape from this sinister, vicious, and cunning sword immortal Hong Jun. I'm sorry, Miss Lei Wanru. You can't leave. Suddenly, 2 women dressed like waitresses stood in front of Lei Wanru. They looked at the disheveled girl in front of them playfully and said, Miss Lei Wanru, all of us heard that you're willing to join Master Hong Jun's family and resign from your position in our merit exchange store. You're no longer an employee of our merit exchange store. You have no right to leave our staff area. Please leave our merit exchange store through the main door. Chapter 1358. In the merit exchange store, Lei Wanru's family background was not the most powerful, but her temper was definitely the worst. Her conduct was also the worst, especially when it came to embezzlement. She was even more brazen and did not know how to avoid doing things. With such a personality, Lei Wanru naturally would not have any good relations in the merit exchange store. There were even many people who wanted to embarrass Lei Wanru behind her back, or give her a pair of shoes to wear. However, because of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal, no one had done so yet. After all, it would not be good if such a thing were to blow up. If it were to blow up, the merit exchange store's dirty tricks would be widely known. At the beginning, when Lei Wanru courted death by insulting Sword Immortal Hong Jun, and when Gahan took the initiative to offer himself, these waiters wisely chose to watch from the sidelines. They quietly shrank to the side and pretended as if they did not exist. They wanted to watch Lei Wanru make a fool of herself. However, what these waiters did not expect was that not only did Sword Immortal Hong Jun not blame Lei Wanru, but he seemed to have taken a liking to her and wanted to take her into his room. This made these waiters who were watching from the sidelines very unhappy. At the same time, they muttered softly. If they had scolded Sword Immortal Hong Jun just now, Would they also be able to become a phoenix? Just as these waiters were feeling vexed and envious of Lei Wanru, the situation ushered in the most perfect reversal. This sword Immortal Hong Jun actually planned to use such a vicious move as an exclusive made to deeply humiliate Lei Wanru. This instantly made the other waiters feel extremely satisfied. Therefore, the moment Lei Wanru was about to escape through the staff's passageway, two waiters with the most powerful backgrounds, who were not inferior to the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal, jumped out and blocked Lei Wanru's way. They used the most dignified reason to prevent Lei Wanru from leaving through the staff's passageway. At the same time, they forced Lei Wanru to face Gahan directly. To Lei Wanru, this was undoubtedly more terrifying than killing her. On the other hand, Gahan did not take the initiative to force Lei Wanru. He did not even make a move or say a word. He just stood quietly in front of the counter and watched Lei Wanru, who was sitting on the ground, blocked by her colleagues, and could only be trapped in the small space behind the counter. The situation seemed to be in a stalemate. After more than 10 minutes, a few rapid footsteps pushed through the growing crowd of onlookers into the merit exchange store. Everyone took a closer look and found that these people who came at this time were all women, and they were wearing uniform-made uniforms with the words Yinjing City Exclusive Maid Training Academy hanging on their chests. Obviously, the people from a maid training academy who had just spoken to Guhan on the phone had arrived. However, they were different from the soft and charming exclusive maids in their impression. At this time, these exclusive maids all looked strong and strong. They were all healthy women in their 30s or 40s. Such women wearing maid uniforms that made people's imagination run wild always gave people a very contradictory sense of déjà vu. However, it could be seen that the exclusive maid training academy was experienced. They knew that not all the acceptance processes were smooth, and they needed these big and strong women to do it. Hello, Sword Immortal Hong Jun. Here is the application form. Please fill it out. These maids respectfully transferred a spreadsheet to Guhan's personal terminal. Guhan nodded and quickly filled it out, completing the entire entrusted training process. In fact, the process of this entrusted training was relatively complicated. At least 2 or 3 hours were needed for the sword holder to complete all the procedures. However, who is Sword Immortal Hong Jun? How could his precious time be wasted in such a place? Therefore, the exclusive maid training academy took the initiative to simplify all the procedures to the extent that only a form was needed. Take her away. After the leading maid confirmed that the form was completed, she waved to her companions behind her. Under the service of the other attendants who opened the door, they quickly entered the counter. One by one, they grabbed Lei Wanru's arm as if they were grabbing a chick and forcefully pulled her out. Let me go. I was forced. I was deceived. I don't want to be an exclusive maid. Let me go. Let me go. Lei Wanru struggled and screamed desperately. The leading exclusive maid couldn't help but hesitate. It would be fine if they were in a secluded place, but there were so many onlookers here. If Lei Wanru was really forced, then even with Sword Immortal Hong Jun's background, it would be difficult for them to deal with this matter. Lei Wanru stopped screaming. Both of us heard it just now. You have already agreed to Sword Immortal Hong Jun's request and agreed to join his family. Why are you still quibbling? Don't you recognize what you said? The two attendants at the side immediately screamed. You two bastards. Both of you are in cahoots with Sword Immortal Hong Jun. You colluded to harm me. Lei Wanru scolded. Both of us are liars? The two attendants snorted coldly and immediately said to the surrounding onlookers, Everyone, be the judge. Everyone saw and heard what happened just now. Did this Lei Wanru agree to Master Hong Jun's request 3 times in a row and become his exclusive maid? That's right. We heard it. I can testify. Yes, I can also testify. We all heard it. This Miss Lei Wanru really said so. The surrounding onlookers immediately became noisy. Many of these onlookers were sword bearers who had been harassed or ridiculed by Lei Wanru. In their hearts, they only had a deep hatred for Lei Wanru and did not have a good impression of her. Now that there was such an opportunity in front of them, they certainly wouldn't miss it. What's more, there was no need to lie against their conscience. Lei Wanru had indeed agreed to Gahan's request again and again. They were just telling the truth. Seeing that the surrounding onlookers had said so, the few people from the Maid Academy were instantly relieved. They no longer cared about Lei Wanru's excuses and forcefully dragged her back to the academy to receive 3 years of training. Let me go. My father is the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. My father won't let you off for treating me like this. Lei Wanru saw that her previous words were useless and could only use her father as a shield. Sure enough, when the people from the Maid Academy heard that Lei Wanru's father was the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal, they became hesitant again. The Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal and Hong Jun Sword Immortal were on the same level, and the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal was a local immortal sword bearer in Yanjing City. Gahan was only an immortal sword bearer in Yuzhong City and couldn't stay in Yanjing City for long. Once the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal exerted pressure on the academy and Gahan wasn't around, the academy really didn't know how to deal with it. Sigh. Gahan sighed. He knew that it was time for him to step in and deal with it. However, just as he took out his personal terminal rang. Looking at the name of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal displayed on his personal terminal, Gahan revealed a surprised smile. Speak of the devil, and he will appear. Hello, Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. Long time no see, Gahan said in front of everyone. Lei Wanru's heart was instantly filled with joy. Her father must have found out about her and called to save her. So you already know about this. However, I really like your daughter, Miss Lei Wanru, and hope that she can become my exclusive maid. What do you think, Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal? All right, I understand. Thank you. I will definitely pay you a visit another day. After all, your daughter is also one of my people. Our families can be considered in-laws. Of course, I should pay you a visit personally. Gahan chatted cheerfully with Sword Immortal Thunder and Fire, who was on the other end of the call. Lei Wanru's heart sank to the bottom of the abyss. She had a very bad premonition about what was about to happen. All right, please explain it to me. After a short conversation, Gahan took the initiative to turn on the external speaker function of his personal terminal. The Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal's voice was immediately transmitted to everyone's ears. I am Lei Wanru's father, the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. I agree to let my daughter become Sword Immortal Hong Jun's exclusive maid. Please follow the Academy's rules and educate my immature daughter so that she can fully satisfy all of Sword Immortal Hong Jun's needs. She will become an exclusive maid who is useful to society and able to contribute to society. That's all I have to say. You can take her away now. After saying this, the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal immediately hung up. Dad, you can't do this to me. I am your biological daughter. Lei Wanru screamed shrilly when she heard the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal's words. However, it was useless to say anything else now. After the people from the exclusive Maid Academy heard the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal's declaration, they no longer had any scruples. They forcefully pulled Lei Wanru onto their school bus and quickly disappeared on the other side of the road. Let's go too, Gahan said to the Victory Sword calmly and left the Merit Exchange store. When the onlookers saw that the matter was over, they dispersed one after another. However, the complete video of the incident was leaked to the internet. Soon, many netizens learned of this interesting story. At the same time, they also felt a deep fear towards Sword Immortal Hong Jun. This Sword Immortal Hong Jun was actually able to make the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal give up his pride and take the initiative to give his daughter to him as his exclusive maid. How powerful was this Sword Immortal Hong Jun? Master, this Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal was too cowardly. He gave up his daughter just like that. On the way back to the hotel, the Victory Sword said to Gahan in confusion, he has more than 20 daughters. One less is not a big deal to him. Moreover, I can become a family with him. What's the point of losing face? Today, he gave me face. In the future, I will return the favor. My face is much more valuable than his. Gahan said calmly. Then what about Lei Wanru? Boss, you can't really want to take her as your exclusive maid, right? I'm disgusted by this woman. Victory's sword said in a slightly displeased tone. Originally, I didn't really want her to be my exclusive maid. I only wanted her to stay in the exclusive maid academy for 3 years and teach her a lesson. It could be considered as helping her in her future life. However, I didn't expect her to reveal her father's identity. I really didn't expect the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal to give his daughter to me as his exclusive maid. In this way, I have no choice but to take her as my exclusive maid after 3 years. Gohan said with slight helplessness. So, she asked for it and gave up her life. The Victory Sword was stunned for a moment and then said with infinite emotion, "That's right." Gohan shrugged. The truth was so ridiculous. Chapter 1359. Chairman, I just received news that Sword Immortal Hong Jun and his disciple have already left Yinjing City. We don't know where they went. On the 3rd day of the press conference, the Great Sun Sword Immortal, who was dealing with various matters, suddenly received news that Gohan had already left Yinjing City. This made the Great Sun Sword Immortal heave a long sigh of relief. This meant that Gohan would no longer pursue the matter of the natural sword lady. This matter was over. I got it. If there's nothing else, you can continue with your work. The Great Sun Sword Immortal said to his secretary that there's one more thing. The Merit Store's purchasing department has reported to the Sword Committee that their sword mark imprints are almost depleted. Especially the first-class sword marked Divine Stones. They've all been exchanged. They hope that the Sword Committee can replenish it immediately. Otherwise, the Merit Store will not be able to carry out daily exchanges, the secretary said. What? How did it deplete so quickly? Hearing the secretary's words, the Great Sun Sword Immortal was shocked. He immediately asked, "How did this happen? Didn't the Sword Committee replenish the stock of the Merit Store a month ago? And those sword-marked Divine Stones. I remember that the Merit Store had 60 of them. How did they all disappear? There are only 200 of them left in the storage of the Sword Committee. How could they have all been exchanged in a month? It's Sword Immortal Hong Jun," the secretary said with a sad face. Sword Immortal Hong Jun went to the Merit Store yesterday and used 30 million merit points to exchange for 60 sets of imprints. That's why the entire Merit Store no longer has any sword mark imprints. Hearing the secretary's words, the Great Sun Sword Immortal revealed a pained expression. He could only console himself. Forget it, just give it to them. Compared to the Imperial Seeds and the Natural Sword Lady, these things are not worth mentioning. So be it. As long as this ancestor can put down his prejudice against Yin Jing City, it would be worth it to give him 100 sets. Other than the sword mark imprints, did Sword Immortal Hong Jun exchange for anything else? The Great Sun Sword Immortal asked curiously. This Sword Immortal Hong Jun only exchanged for 60 sets of sword mark imprints. He did not exchange for anything else, but the secretary looked like he wanted to say something. But what? Don't say half of what you're saying, the Great Sun Sword Immortal said with a pained expression. However, Sword Immortal Hong Jun also took in an exclusive maid from the Merit Exchange Store. Wei Pei went to our Yinjing City exclusive maid training academy to train for 3 years, the secretary said weakly. There's such a thing. The Great Sun Sword Immortal was shocked. This Gohan didn't look like a lecherous person. Why would he do such a thing? Could it be that there was a peerless beauty in the Merit Exchange Store? That's not right. The girls in the Merit Exchange Store are all young girls, and they are the relatives of my friends. I've seen most of them before, and there really aren't any beauties that could move my heart. I think that personal maid is the daughter of the Thunder and Fire Sword Immortal. However, the process is a little... Forget it. Chairman, you should take a look for yourself. I can't explain it clearly. The secretary immediately pulled up the entire video taken by the onlookers. After the Great Sun Sword Immortal watched it, his mouth gaped wide open. After a long while, he closed it again. With a slightly helpless and bitter smile, he said, "This Sword Immortal Hong Jun, he also has such an interesting side. Master, are we going back to Yuzhong City?" Lu Shihua asked softly as he massaged his sore and swollen thigh while holding his brother's hand. "Yes. We'll send your brother back to Yuzhong City first. Guhan nodded. Then why aren't we driving the hovercraft? Lu Shihua asked with a pained expression. This should be nothing to you in the past. How long has it been since you last walked? Guhan asked with a frown as he watched Lu Shihua continuously massaging his thigh. Although Lu Shihua didn't want to admit it, he still nodded honestly. Ever since I became the Sword Pavilion Master, Shi Jiyuan has given me a lot of tedious work. I spend most of my time in the Sword Pavilion's office, and I completely rely on the Pavilion Master's car to go out. That's why I haven't walked in a long time. Excuses, Guhan said coldly. Not only have you not walked in the past 3 years, I'm afraid that you haven't practiced the swordsmanship that Master taught you. If you had followed Master's teachings and practiced the swordsmanship for 8 hours every day, even if you didn't walk, it wouldn't have been a problem for you. Master, please forgive me. I have slacked off. Lu Shihua's footsteps suddenly stopped, and he rushed to kneel down in front of Guhan. Right on this wet, muddy ground, he kowtowed to Guhan 3 times and said with incomparable shame, Sword Immortal Hong Jun, it's not like that. Sister has to work until late at night every day. She really doesn't have time to practice. Sister didn't slack off on purpose. Seeing his sister kneeling on the ground and apologizing to Guhan, Lu Yin hurriedly explained for his sister, I'm not going to hold you accountable. If I wanted to, I would have done so back in London. I know that you have suffered a lot in the past 3 years. Master has let you down. I won't hold you accountable for this. Guhan shook his head, helped Lu Shihua up from the ground, and patted the mud off her body. Master, Lu Shihua's nose was filled with bitterness. She was so touched that tears flowed out uncontrollably. At the same time, with this sudden touch, Lu Shihua burst out with great courage. She threw herself into Guhan's arms and repeatedly called him master in a slightly spoiled tone. Hey, silly disciple. Guhan smiled bitterly as he patted Lu Shihua's head. Lu Yin looked at Guhan with jealousy. He had never seen his sister show such a weak expression. His sister would only show such an expression in front of Guhan. This made Lu Yin very jealous. Master, you can let bygones be bygones. Since you have already come out of Shanghai Pass and become a celestial sword wielder, you will become an emperor sword wielder sooner or later. As my only disciple, you must not embarrass me. If you don't have more than half of my abilities, I will be too embarrassed to admit that you are my disciple. Moreover, I only have you as my only disciple. With my abilities, my 9 swords of mysterious heaven and chaos sword technique, I must rely on you to pass it on. If you can't accept my inheritance, I will have to find another disciple. Guhan said calmly. No, Master, don't look for another disciple. Shihua doesn't want juniors. No, it's just that it's hard enough for you to teach 1 disciple. I can't bear to see you teach more disciples. Disciple promises Master that disciple will definitely be able to learn all of Master's abilities and spread the legacy of my Hongjun lineage. Lu Shihua immediately jumped out of Guhan's embrace and said with an anxious expression. It seemed that Lu Shihua really did not want to see another junior brother or sister. That's good. Since you have this awareness, I am very happy. Guhan nodded in satisfaction. Actually, I have a maglev flying car in my dimensional pocket. It will take us 3 days at most to return to Yuzhong City. But I don't want that. I want you to use your feet to walk the mountains and rivers from Yinjing City to Yuzhong City as your cultivation. From now on, I will teach you swordsmanship at night. During the day, you will take the initiative to find all the Yuan Ko nearby and use these Yuan Ko as your whetstone. This way you can grow quickly. Do you understand my painstaking efforts? Guhan asked Lu Shihua as he looked into his eyes. Yes, Master, I understand. Lu Shihua nodded vigorously. Very good. Guhan patted Lu Shihua's head again and said, I have already felt that a group of Yuan Ko has discovered us. They are recklessly attacking us. I will leave these Yuan Ko to you. Also, you are not allowed to release your sword lady. You must fight with your own strength. Is there a problem? No problem. Lu Shihua replied, loudly, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Master, what kind of Yuan Ko is this? It looks so cute. When dozens of yellow-skinned Yuan Ko, with lightning-like tails and bodies like big mice appeared in front of Lu Shihua could not help but ask Guhan. "Let me check." Guhan scanned them with the illustrated handbook and immediately said to Lu Shihua, "These Yuan Ko are called Pikachu. They are soul-grade Yuan Ko and can release 100,000 volts of electric current." "Yes, master, I understand." Lu Shihua looked at the Pikachu in front of him and immediately said with some embarrassment, "Although you are very cute, so cute that I can't help but lay my hands on you, I will not be tempted by you." "But I won't be tempted by you. I promised master that I would definitely destroy you." "Small soul-grade Yuan Ko, watch as I, the Shihua sword spirit, destroy you." After Lu Shihua finished saying these meaningless and somewhat funny lines, he waved the 8-winged seraphim sword in his hand and charged towards these Pikachu. Pikachu. When the dozens of Pikachu saw Lu Shihua rushing towards them, their mung bean-like eyes looked at each other, and their bodies simultaneously emitted yellow electric light. These yellow electric lights converged in the air and directly struck Lu Shihua's body. Chapter 1360. Master, your disciple is useless. After a thrilling battle, Lu Shihua, who was lying on the ground, had tears streaming down his face as he spoke to Guhan. It was obvious that Lu Shihua had lost the battle, and it was a very miserable defeat. The opponent was clearly just a few dozen soul-level Yuan Ko, who was equivalent to a treasure sword-level sword wielder. Facing a spirit sword-level sword wielder like Lu Shihua, even 100 of them shouldn't be his opponent. At the start of the battle, Lu Shihua relied on the fact that he had a thick and sturdy personal shield. He simply didn't care about Pikachu's electric shock. He wanted to directly rely on his personal shield to forcefully withstand the attack and get close to these cute big mice. However, what Lu Shihua did not know was that these Pikachu had a special characteristic, and that was, although their electric shock damage could be blocked by the close-fitting shield, they were still able to withstand it. However, the paralysis effect of the electric shock was something that could not be blocked by a close-fitting shield. Especially when dozens of Pikachu's electric shocks combined, Lu Shihua was directly electrocuted to the ground by this powerful paralysis, unable to move. In this way, Lu Shihua became a living target for the Pikachu. The continuous electric shocks were acting on Lu Shihua's body. Even if Lu Shihua's personal shield was thick, there were still times when it couldn't hold on. Therefore, after Lu Shihua's personal shield shattered, Lu Shihua could only use this body to withstand Pikachu's electric shock. When Lu Shihua was electrocuted until his entire body was charred black and on the verge of death, Guhan dispersed the Pikachu. He then squatted beside Lu Shihua, who had turned into a charred corpse, and calmly looked at his pitiful disciple. Thinking of the heroic words he had spoken before the battle, as well as his current miserable appearance, Lu Shihua not only felt that his body was in excruciating pain, even his heart was in excruciating pain. When tears flowed down the corners of his bloody eyes, the excruciating pain became even more intense. "Luin, get your sister into the med bay. Otherwise, she won't live for more than 5 minutes." Guhan said as he tossed his med bay to Luin. Oh, Luin, who had been scared out of his wits, finally reacted. He hurriedly rushed forward to pick up his sister, but when his hands touched Lu Shihua's charred skin, Lu Shihua instantly let out a loud howl like a pig being slaughtered. "Ah! Luin, be gentler. Are you trying to kill your sister?" This mournful howl startled the entire forest. Countless birds flew up from afar. It was a picturesque scene. "Don't call me that. How dare you scold your brother when you don't have the ability? If it hurts, then endure it. If you can't even deal with a few dozen Pikachu, what right do you have to complain about pain?" Before Luin could say anything, Guhan coldly berated him. Lu Shihua immediately shut his mouth. Lu Shihua didn't dare to cry out in pain, even though the pain was constantly assaulting his body. "Sister, you are much lighter than before. It feels like a feather." Seeing his sister's pained expression, Luin couldn't help but comfort her. He knew that his sister cared about her weight the most. However, this was the truth. When a person was burned, the muscles all over their body would be destroyed. They would also lose a lot of body fluids, so their body would become much lighter. Is that so? Sure enough, after hearing his brother's words, Lu Shihua, who was originally in pain, actually showed a hint of happiness. It seemed that weight was something that women pursued since ancient times. The burn looked quite serious, but it was an injury that could be easily treated by the medical pod. So, in just 2 hours, Lu Shihua jumped out of the medical pod energetically and returned to her original beautiful appearance. Master! After coming out of the medical pod, Lu Shihua lowered his head and stood beside Gahan with a face full of shame. Gahan didn't say anything. He looked at the time on his personal terminal and said to Lu Shihua, "Follow me." Lu Shihua followed Gahan in an unknown direction for a while. Then he saw Gahan's sword lady, Heavenly Sword, sitting on a rock and waiting for him with a smile. "Gahan, I've done what you wanted me to do. Where's my reward?" Heavenly Sword asked as he stretched his hand out to Gahan. "Here you go." Gahan placed a bottle of Red Star Erguo 2 in Heavenly Sword's hand. Ever since he had drunk it, Heavenly Sword had fallen in love with the taste. That was why Gahan had been able to loot a lot of old Red Star Erguo 2 from the warehouse in Beijing. However, he had hidden all of them in another dimensional pocket and used them as tools to bribe Heavenly Sword. Gahan and Lu Shihua lay on the big rock and looked over it. They saw a big pit that looked like it had been smashed by a meteorite. There were more than 300 Pikachu together in the big pit. It was obvious that they were a large Pikachu group. Very good. Seeing so many Pikachu, Gahan nodded in satisfaction. When he saw Gahan nod, a creepy feeling welled up in Lu Shihua's heart. This Gahan, don't tell me he wants to. In the next second, Lu Shihua's bad premonition was confirmed. He heard Gahan say to Lu Shihua, "Shihua, let's stay here for the time being. We'll leave when you can kill all these Pikachu." Hearing this, Lu Shihua's entire body instantly became like a rock. "What are you still standing there for? Etienne, go lure a few dozen Pikachu out for Shihua practice with. Remember, you're not allowed to hurt a single Pikachu. Do you hear me?" Gahan stuffed another bottle of Red Star Erguo 2 into Etienne's arms. "No problem. I promise I'll complete the mission," Etienne said with great satisfaction as he carried the 2 bottles of 100-year-old wine. This also meant that Lu Shihua's suffering had begun. When dusk approached, Lu Yin once again carried the charred Lu Shihua back to the medical cabin. As the Heavenly Sword had not controlled the aggro well, it had accidentally lured nearly 40 Pikachu over. As a result, Lu Shihua's injuries were even worse than the last time. Lu Yin's body trembled. When the physically and mentally exhausted Lu Shihua crawled out of the medical pod with great difficulty, her suffering did not end. She was once again pulled by Gahan to a flat ground to teach her swordsmanship. She was personally trained by Gahan. Originally, Gahan planned to teach Lu Shihua the mysterious lady of the 9 Heavens sword technique. However, Gahan did not have the time to go to the peak of Kunlun, so naturally, he had no way of obtaining the mysterious lady of the 9 Heavens sword technique. However, considering that his strongest technique, the Chaos sword technique, had its foundation evolved from the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Therefore, after careful consideration, Gahan still decided to teach Lu Shihua the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. This way, it would be more convenient for him to teach Lu Shihua the Chaos sword technique in the future. However, Lu Shihua was not the only one who was being trained. Many sword ladies also received Gahan's teachings along with Lu Shihua. Among them, Qidian, Douyu, Juzi, and even Etienne took the initiative to jump out and ask Gahan to teach them. They also deeply felt that they were lacking in swordsmanship and hoped that Gahan would help them improve as well. As for the poor little Qingpin, he was forced to be a strong man by Gahan. This little guy, who was extremely tired when practicing swordsmanship, actually did not have any intention of taking the initiative at all. This was ridiculous. He needed to be properly trained. Other than that, the other sword ladies did not seem to have any interest in training. Shi Shui was still the same, living alone in the scabbard. If there was nothing particularly important, she would definitely not come out. The three sisters of the immortal execution sword could be said to be the ancestors of the sword ladies in the world. Although Gahan had never seen the three sisters' swordsmanship with his own eyes, he saw that they did not care about the 9 swords of mysterious heaven that Gahan taught them. It seemed that their swordsmanship was already very powerful, so they had no interest in participating in this kind of training. However, what Gahan did not understand was that the victory sword actually looked at Gahan's 9 swords of mysterious heaven with disdain. The victory sword could be considered as a sword lady who had synchronized with many sword bearers before. Her strength was also recorded in a more comprehensive manner. According to the senior immortal sword wielders who had coordinated the victory sword was a rather useless immortal sword tier swordmistress. In terms of skills, they were very simple. They were all direct attack skills without any special skill effects. In terms of swordsmanship, although the victory sword's swordsmanship itself could not be said to be very weak, it was very bad compared to the other sword ladies. It could not beat any sword lady of the immortal execution sword and was the last in the immortal sword record. According to Gahan's original estimation, the victory sword's swordsmanship was probably only better than the past water sword, Qingpin's sword, and Doyu's sword among all his sword ladies. In terms of swordsmanship alone, the victory sword could not beat any of the other sword ladies. But now, in the midst of victory, she was actually looking down on the other sword maidens who were in the midst of training. This made Gahan feel slightly surprised. "Victory, why don't you participate in my swordsmanship training?" Gahan grabbed an opportunity to walk to the victory sword side and asked curiously. "There's no need." The victory sword laughed and shrugged her shoulders. "I know everything that you know. I don't need you to teach me." Gahan fell silent. He looked at the victory sword deeply, then pulled out passing water from its scabbard. He pointed the tip of the sword at the victory sword that looked exactly like Gu Xianyuan and asked, "Victory, are you willing to spar with me?" "Of course. If you need it, master." The victory sword nodded, and the spar between the sword bearers and sword ladies suddenly began. Chapter 1361. So that's how it is. After sparring with his sword lady, Gahan had not regained his senses. He was still immersed in the battle. It was not that Gahan had lost the sparring. Gahan was still the winner. However, Gahan's victory had not been easy. Without using sword element, he had fought with the victory sword for more than 1,000 moves. He had only defeated the victory sword by relying on some sword techniques that he had learned in the instance dungeon. This was the first time in Gahan's life that he had experienced such a difficult battle. It was also the first time that Gahan had fought with an opponent for more than 1,000 moves. Before this, Gahan had never fought for such a long time. The reason was very simple. The moves that the victory sword used were completely Gahan's moves. Whatever move Gahan used, the victory sword used the same move. The moves between the two of them were not different at all. The victory sword's proficiency and standard were even higher than Gahan's. If he had not used I Ching's body to experience the power of heaven that surpassed the Emperor's sword level, Gahan might not have been a match for the victory sword. To Gahan, this was like fighting with another him. Of course, it would become a stalemate, and they would be equally matched. "Are you the victory sword, or Gu Xianyuan?" After pondering quietly for a while, Gahan suddenly asked the victory sword, who was standing beside him. Obviously, Gahan had figured out the problem. If the victory sword had merged with the identity of Gu Xianyuan, when he became Gu Xianyuan, it was equivalent to becoming the victory sword. It was just that the body of Gu Xianyuan had become independent from his body and had become an independent personality. Therefore, all the sword techniques that he had mastered when he was Gu Xianyuan were naturally mastered by the victory sword. The victory sword was the complete manifestation of Gu Xianyuan. Therefore, the previous victory sword no longer existed. Not only had its appearance changed, but even its terrible sword techniques had changed. The previous sword lady, who was the last in the immortal sword tier, had completely disappeared. "This is up to you, master. If you wish for me to be the sword of victory, then I will still be the sword of victory. If Master wishes for me to be Gu Xian's fate, then I will still be Gu Xian's fate. The victory sword replied calmly in response to Gohan's question. What if I let you choose? Gohan once again threw the question back at Victory Sword. Actually, after fusing with Gu Xianyuan's identity, I can no longer remember the original memories of the Victory Sword. I can only vaguely remember where my origin came from. If Master really gives me the power to decide, then I hope that I can exist as Gu Yuanyuan. The Victory Sword said after hesitating for a long time. Then you could be a good friend. Gohan nodded, and an idea flashed in his mind. He then said, we might as well throw away the name Sword of Victory. From today onwards, you'll be called the Xianyuan Sword. Well, Gohan, this crazy renaming demon, after helping the king of Yugo Jian Sword change its name to Qi Dian Sword, he also conveniently changed the name of the Sword of Victory. Xianyuan Sword. Hearing Gohan's words, the Victory Sword. Oh no. Xianyuan Sword's face revealed a trace of a satisfied smile. Obviously, it was very satisfied with this new name. Time passed by in an orderly manner. During the day, Gohan arranged for the poor Lu Shihua to challenge Pikachu, and then sent Lu Shihua, who had turned into charcoal, to the medical chamber time and time again. At night, it was time for Gohan's small class. All the sword ladies felt that their lives had become incomparably fulfilling, except for our poor Lu Shihua. However, after a week of training, Lu Shihua finally gradually improved. She no longer couldn't kill a Pikachu and would be electrocuted by the opponent, unable to move until she was on the verge of death. Firstly, because Lu Shihua's agility had greatly increased, the Pikachu's electric shock could no longer hit her in one hit. Lu Shihua could already rely on her own movement and speed to avoid the Pikachu's electric shock. After all, Lu Shihua was a spirit sword level sword wielder, and her speed was much faster than the Pikachu. Secondly, because Lu Shihua had gradually adapted to the feeling of electric shock, her body began to have the ability to resist paralysis. Even if she was directly electrocuted, she wouldn't be completely paralyzed and unable to move, but her movements would become very slow. And most importantly, Lu Shihua had already mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, Sword of Spring swordsmanship. She could open a sword chi shield and rely on her own sword chi shield to block the Pikachu's electric shock. However, because the Sword of Spring could only block one side at most, once the number of Pikachu increased, the electric shock would attack from all directions, and the Sword of Spring would no longer be that useful. With the support of these 3 abilities, the Pikachu's seemingly invulnerable electric shock net was drilled a big hole by Lu Shihua. As long as Lu Shihua could get close to the Pikachu group, she could use the 8-winged Seraphim sword in her hand to send a few unlucky Pikachu back into the dimensional vortex. But that was all. As he got closer to the Pikachu, the accuracy of the electric shocks became higher and higher, and the voltage of the electric shocks also became greater. After killing 1 or 2 Pikachu, Lu Shihua would be electrocuted to the ground again, and he would once again experience the feeling of being turned into a piece of charcoal. However, with every battle, Lu Shihua's strength would increase. According to Gohan's estimation, Lu Shihua would only need another month at most before these hundreds of Pikachu would be killed by Lu Shihua, and Lu Shihua would be able to successfully obtain the title of Pikachu Killer. But the problem was that the Pikachu weren't fools. After discovering that there were casualties in their tribe every day, the entire Pikachu tribe decided to move away from this dangerous place after Pika. It was a pity that they did not know how difficult of an opponent they had provoked. Gohan and the rest followed behind the Pikachu tribe like shadows, and every day there were still Pikachu that suffered under Lu Shihua's hands. Seeing that their companions were still dying, the angry and horrified Pikachu group finally decided to band together for warmth. No matter what, they wouldn't send out a small team to leave the group. The remaining 200-plus Pikachu were all tightly united. They foraged together and rested together. Even if they were alone, they wouldn't leave the group. They wanted to borrow the group's strength to protect themselves. This was undoubtedly a huge problem for Lu Shihua. Lu Shihua could easily handle a group of several dozen Pikachu, but the current Lu Shihua definitely couldn't withstand the ocean-like electric shock of more than 200 Pikachu hugging together. Very good. Just what I wanted. Seeing this scene, not only was Gohan not worried, a satisfied smile appeared on his face instead. Actually, before this, Gohan had already discovered that after adapting to the Pikachu's electric shock and gaining resistance to paralysis, the improvement of Lu Shihua's swordsmanship and movement technique with several dozen Pikachu had become less and less. In that case, perhaps 200 Pikachu would be the best assistance to help Lu Shihua break out of the cocoon and become a butterfly. So, Gohan patted Lu Shihua's shoulder and said to this good disciple of his that made her feel the most despair in her life, "I'll change your trial method. From now on, your goal is to charge into the Pikachu group, survive for 20 minutes without harming a single Pikachu, and ensuring that your personal shield doesn't shatter." What? Lu Shihua was so scared that her limbs went limp on the spot. This meant that she had to perfectly dodge the attacks of more than 200 Pikachu within 20 minutes. Lu Shihua suddenly felt that she would be wasting her entire life competing with these Pikachu. "Master, this is simply impossible. Do you hate your disciple? Your disciple really can't do it." After 2 weeks of cultivation, Lu Shihua finally threw a tantrum with Gohan for the first time. This was because in Lu Shihua's heart, this was simply impossible. "What did you say?" Hearing Lu Shihua's complaint, Gohan coldly glared at Lu Shihua. Lu Shihua jumped in fright and immediately lowered her head, not daring to say another word. "Forget it. Didn't you say that it was impossible?" Gohan snorted coldly. "Fine, then I'll let you see if this is something impossible." After saying this, Gohan walked directly into the group of more than 200 Pikachu under Lu Shihua's witness. "Pika, Pika!" The moment Gohan appeared, all of the Pikachu had already noticed Gohan's presence. Their small cheeks that were as red as apples began to flicker with golden lightning. When Gohan entered the Pikachu's attack range, these lightning bolts all exploded in an instant, forming a lightning bolt as thick as a train. With lightning speed, it struck towards Gohan at lightning speed. Wait! The moment the lightning bolt struck, Gohan's figure appeared in another position as if he had teleported. Naturally, the thick lightning bolt could only hit an unlucky pine tree nearby, charring it in an instant. The Pikachu were actually stunned for a moment. They didn't seem to think that the attack they were so proud of would be so easily dodged by their opponent. Feeling indignant, they gathered their lightning bolts again and launched a few more lightning bolts at Gohan, but Gohan easily dodged all of them. As a result, the Pikachu decided to change their strategy. They no longer combined the lightning bolts together, but used each individual as a unit. More than 200 lightning bolts struck towards Gohan at the same time. It felt like a large net made of lightning bolts, leaving no space to dodge. Unfortunately, since it was a net, there would definitely be holes in it. Although the holes in the net were very small, for an expert like Gohan, a small gap was enough. Gohan was like a graceful butterfly, nimbly shuttling through the countless lightning bolts. Even though the Pikachu had already exerted their strength to the extreme, not a single lightning bolt could hit Gohan's body. The last 20 minutes hadn't passed yet. Instead, it was the Pikachu who had exhausted the electricity in their bodies. Seeing that they had no chance of harming Gohan, and that Gohan didn't take the initiative to hurt them, they simply stuck out their butts and ignored Gohan. On the other side, Lu Shihua's eyes were already glued to the scene. Chapter 1362. Lu Shihua and Lu Yin watched dumbfoundedly as their master walked back. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have imagined that there was someone in this world who could pass through a thunderstorm without being touched by any electricity. What was even more terrifying was that Gohan didn't even use the defensive sword technique, sort of spring, from the beginning to the end. He completely relied on his own movement technique to dodge. Lu Shihua felt that the word human could no longer be used to describe Gohan. "It's your turn." Gohan didn't give Lu Shihua any chance to prepare. After he left the Pikachu pack, He immediately went to Lu Shihua's side and threw her into the Pikachu pack. Lu Shihua's body was instantly drenched in sweat. She was extremely frightened, panicked, and vigilant as she looked at the Pikachu around her. Just as she was about to focus all her attention to avoid them, something unexpected happened to Lu Shihua. The surrounding Pikachu all powerlessly collapsed to the ground, lazily looking at Lu Shihua. They didn't have the slightest intention of giving Lu Shihua an electric rain. Occasionally, one or two Pikachu would attack Lu Shihua, but their electric currents didn't even extend a few meters before they ran out of voltage and disappeared into thin air. Lu Shihua stayed in the large pack of Pikachu for a few minutes. She looked at Gohan helplessly and said, "Master, it's not that your disciple isn't working hard, but these Pikachu aren't good enough. I almost forgot. I've already used up all the electricity in these Pikachu's bodies." Gohan came to a sudden realization. It seemed like he had acted a little too ruthlessly and squeezed out all the pitiful Pikachu. No, time is precious. I have to think of a way to restore these Pikachu's vitality. After thinking for a while, Gohan took out a large nuclear battery from his dimensional pocket. This large nuclear battery was originally used by Gohan to supply electricity to his campsite. According to the instructions written on this large nuclear battery, this power was enough to supply a household that consumed 100 kilowatts of electricity daily for 500 years. Although he didn't know whether the manual was boasting or not, it should be enough to supply the Pikachu with their daily electricity needs. Hence, Gohan immediately got to work himself. He found some wires and connected them to the positive and negative poles of the large core energy battery. Then, he adjusted the battery's voltage to the highest 1200 volts. After that, he brought the large core energy battery and walked into the crowd of Pikachu. He casually grabbed a fallen Pikachu. When this Pikachu saw Gohan's hand grabbing towards him, his face immediately revealed a terrified expression. He used the last bit of strength in his body to escape. But how could it possibly escape from Gohan's grasp? In less than a second, Gohan caught its tail and pulled it back forcefully. The entire Pikachu fell completely into Gohan's hands. Pick up, Pikachu. Witnessing their friends being captured by the enemy, the Pikachu tribe who had collapsed powerlessly on the ground struggled to stand up. Their apple-like little faces once again emitted scorching electric sparks, as though intending to exhaust the last of their strength to battle against Gohan. However, Gohan didn't care about these Pikachu's behavior at all. He grabbed the two positive and negative wires, one red and one blue, from the large nuclear battery, and stuck them on both sides of Pikachu's cheeks. A golden electric current instantly flashed across the apple muscles of the Pikachu. The Pikachu that appeared incomparably resistant and fearful from being grabbed by Gohan instantly changed its expression. It was brimming with comfort, as if it was soaking in a hot bath. Looks like it's effective. Seeing this Pikachu's reaction, Gohan nodded in satisfaction. It seemed like his recharging plan was successful. After discovering that their companions didn't seem to encounter any hostile treatment, the Pikachu that had used the last of their energy to prepare for battle fell back to the ground, preparing to recharge the electricity in their bodies. According to their physical qualities, they would probably need at least 3 days to recharge their electricity to its fullest state. Come, grab it yourself. Gohan didn't have the time to help Pikachu hold the wires. He directly stuffed the red and blue wires into Pikachu's small hands. Moreover, the ends of the wires on Pikachu's face fell at the same time. Pick up. The Pikachu that was originally enjoying a hot bath suddenly realized that the source of comfort was gone. It immediately revealed a somewhat uncomfortable expression. However, Pikachu was Yuan-ko with a certain level of intelligence. When it realized that the red and blue wires were held in its hands, it instinctively imitated Gohan's actions and stuck the two ends of the wires back to its apple muscles. Pikachu. Pikachu once again let out a comfortable moan. It also became the first Pikachu in the Pikachu tribe to learn how to recharge itself. Next, Gohan caught another 9 Pikachu and taught them to recharge themselves according to the teaching method of the first Pikachu. Then, he left the Pikachu tribe and silently stayed at the side to observe these Pikachu's next actions. After about 10 minutes, the first Pikachu suddenly threw away the wires in its hands energetically. Then it said to its other dispirited companion, "Pick up, pick up." After speaking for a long time, that Pikachu finally imitated its companion skeptically. It grabbed the red and blue wires and stuck them to its apple muscles. What happened next was natural. The entire Pikachu tribe began to gather around this large nuclear battery. Their small eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation as they looked at their companions who were recharging. Once one of their companions finished recharging, the next Pikachu would immediately jump up to take over. What surprised Gahan was that although there were many Pikachu, there were no disputes. All the Pikachu were orderly waiting for their companions. So cute. Lu Shihua couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when he saw these cute Pikachu lining up. How cute. It's just some Yuan Ko. It'll take at least a day for them to recharge. Then, you'll have to train with me today. Gohan knocked on Lu Shihua's head. Lu Shihua, who had a pained expression, could only accept Gahan's training for a whole day. The next day, when Lu Shihua walked into the Pikachu tribe with a heart full of apprehension, he immediately enjoyed the warm reception of the Pikachu who had been recharging for a whole day. Countless electric shocks fell around Lu Shihua. Lu Shihua barely dodged for a few seconds before he was electrocuted to the ground. He didn't know how many times in his life he had turned into a piece of charcoal. What was worth mentioning was that when Gahan finally walked into the Pikachu tribe to save Lu Shihua, all the Pikachu stopped electrocuting at the same time and gave Gahan a kind smile. It seemed that these Pikachu had already recognized Gahan as the good person who kindly provided them with a power bank yesterday. This was unexpected for Gahan, who was originally prepared to properly practice his body technique. However, thanks to the Pikachu's cooperation, Gahan very easily rescued Lu Shihua in time. And in this one day, Lu Shihua was electrocuted into charcoal a total of 7 times. It was simply a hellish experience. On the second day, when Lu Shihua mustered up his courage and walked into the Pikachu tribe again, the Pikachu tribe suddenly turned a blind eye to Lu Shihua. They were also too lazy to waste the electricity in their bodies to electrocute Lu Shihua. This was also a very normal thing. Facing this guy who couldn't be electrocuted to death and appeared in front of them again and again, the Pikachu should also accept their fate. Although the Pikachu had accepted their fate, Gahan wasn't happy. Thus, Gahan decisively forcibly took away the large nuclear battery, and then let Lu Shihua enter the Pikachu tribe who had become incomparably anxious because they lost the large nuclear battery. And the anxious Pikachu once again electrocuted Lu Shihua into charcoal. Thus, Gahan, whose objective was satisfied, returned the large nuclear battery to the Pikachu tribe. This happened a few times, and the Pikachu tribe finally understood a fact. That was, only by electrocuting Lu Shihua could they obtain the right to use the power bank. Thus, Lu Shihua's tragic fate ushered in its own climax. In order to protect the extremely precious power bank of their tribe, the Pikachu tribe used up all their strength in order to electrocute Lu Shihua to his heart's content. After a few more days, Lu Shihua discovered that the medical resources in his and Gohan's medical pods had been completely depleted. The medical pods could no longer function normally and treat their bodies. This was a very normal thing. After all, the designers of the medical pods would never have imagined that someone would enter the medical pods as many as 7 or 8 times a day. No matter how many medical resources there were in the medical pods, it wasn't enough for such consumption. Faced with the situation of depleted medical resources, not only did Lu Shihua not feel any sorrow, but he instead became somewhat excited and happy. If the medical pods couldn't function normally, did that mean that his extremely tragic training was over? After all, Gohan couldn't really disregard his own safety. Unfortunately, Lu Shihua was wrong. When Gohan took out a bottle of Emperor's blood from his dimensional pocket and dripped a quarter of it into Lu Shihua's mouth, Lu Shihua completely recovered in a short 3 minutes. After that, Lu Shihua completely lost all hope for his future life. With the support of the Emperor's blood, the number of times Lu Shihua was electrocuted into charcoal per day instantly increased from 8 to 30 times. If it wasn't for the fact that the Pikachu's charging speed couldn't keep up with the discharge speed, Gohan would probably let Lu Shihua be electrocuted 80 times a day. Although these were extremely painful days for Lu Shihua, he had to admit that Lu Shihua's body technique improved by leaps and bounds in the process of dodging time and time again. After a week, Lu Shihua was able to dodge for 30 seconds. After half a month, Lu Shihua could already last for 3 minutes. After a month and a half, Lu Shihua's movements in the Pikachu had become like a ghost. Although it still couldn't compare to Gohan's body technique, Lu Shihua's goal of lasting in the Pikachu for 20 minutes was already achieved. Gohan could feel that a monster like him was slowly taking shape under his guidance. Chapter 1363. Alright, these Pikachu are no longer able to help you improve your abilities. We can leave this place, Gohan said to Lu Shihua after staying near the Pikachu colony for a whole month. That's great. I can finally leave this place. Lu Shihua's face revealed a joyful expression. They had been tossing and turning here for a month. If they didn't leave soon, Lu Shihua felt that she would be electrocuted silly. However, Lu Shihua's happiness didn't last for too long. She suddenly thought of something and asked Gohan with some fear, "Master, what do you plan to do with these Pikachu?" As Gohan's disciple, Lu Shihua naturally knew how vicious Gohan was towards Yuanko. During the month that they lived in this area, there were at least 20 waves of Yuanko who came looking for trouble with Gohan other than the Pikachu. However, these Yuanko were all killed by Gohan without exception. There was never a moment of mercy in his heart. The reason why he kept these Pikachu was because these Pikachu had value to Lu Shihua. However, now that their value had disappeared and Gohan was preparing to leave, wouldn't these Pikachu be? What else can we do? Of course we'll kill them all. Gohan said indifferently, but there was no room for doubt. But Master, you've seen for yourself these days. These Pikachu rely on the fruits on the trees to survive. Moreover, unless you enter their territory, they won't take the initiative to harm humans. Master, can you let them go and give them a way out? Lu Shihua mustered up her courage and begged Gohan. During this month of interaction, Lu Shihua's attitude towards these Pikachu had changed from resentment at the beginning, wishing that she could kill these Yuanko who electrocuted her every day. Now, it had become a silent friendship. These Pikachu also established a good relationship with Lu Shihua. In the later stages of the battle, the Pikachu no longer guarded Lu Shihua to the death. After destroying Lu Shihua's personal protective shield, they would take the initiative to stop the electric shocks. Some of the Pikachu would even walk up to Lu Shihua's side and use their lightning-shaped tails to gently rub against Lu Shihua's face. The extremely cute appearance of the Pikachu, coupled with some heartwarming actions, completely captured Lu Shihua. Even though Lu Shihua knew that she would be reprimanded by Gohan for making such a request, she could not help but bring it up to Gohan, hoping to save the lives of these Pikachu. Humans are humans, and Yuanko is Yuanko. There is no such thing as a friendship between humans and Yuanko. Even if these Pikachu did not actively harm humans, once humans entered their territory, they would also attack humans, and humans would also die in their hands. Therefore, your reason is not valid. These Pikachu still have to die, Gohan said indifferently. But Master, what about you and Ms. Misaka Mikoto? Aren't you, Ms. Misaka Mikoto, and Mr. Levi good friends? Lu Shihua regretted it as soon as she said that. It was equivalent to using his master's shortcomings to contradict him. It was obviously an extremely infuriating thing, and Gohan might be furious because of it. Ms. Misaka Mikoto, how can Mr. Levi be the same as these Pikachu? Lu Shihua heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Gohan was not angry at all. However, he rejected the idea right away. Ms. Misaka Mikoto and Mr. Levi are free people. They won't harm humans, so they can be friends with humans. What about the 3 Egyptian gods? They're not free people, are they? But Master, you still let them live. This time, Lu Shihua used the 3 Egyptian gods as an example. They're different too. Their godheads are my hands. They dare not act rashly. Gohan said, but that was in the past. Didn't you return their godheads to them? They no longer have anything on you. If they want to kill, they can still kill humans without any scruples. Lu Shihua said without giving up. Don't worry. With me around, they won't dare to kill anyone. Gohan snorted coldly. His expression finally turned sour. Looking at Gohan's expression, Lu Shihua knew that his master was finally on the verge of losing his temper. At this time, it was wise to shut up and not care about the Pikachu anymore. However, Lu Shihua really did not want to see these cute little elves in his master's hands. Therefore, Lu Shihua bit his lips and continued, Master, you can live for 100 years. It won't be a problem for you to live to 140 years old. But what about 140 years later? Master, do you think the 3 Egyptian gods will still be afraid of you? How dare you? Are you cursing me to die? With a shake of Gohan's finger, 5 or 6 sword energies shot out from Gohan's palm, causing a violent explosion in the surroundings. Countless trees that were hundreds of years old and above were destroyed in such an explosion. Hearing such an intense and loud explosion, the Pikachu who were eating fruits in the campsite curiously looked towards the direction of the explosion. However, when they discovered that none of their compatriots were in the explosion range, they went back to eating fruits without a care in the world. They simply didn't expect that a fierce debate about their survival was currently going on. I don't dare to curse you, Master. Lu Shihua's knees softened. She directly knelt in front of Gohan and kept kowtowing hard to show her loyalty to Gohan. But at the same time, Lu Shihua still refused to give up her obsession. She cried and said, Master, you don't think these Pikachu are your friends, but your disciple has already treated these Pikachu as my friends. Master, are you going to let your disciple watch my friends die? Do you want me to be a useless person who can't even protect my friends? Sigh, even at this time, you still don't know what's important. Gohan sighed, but his attitude finally softened. After thinking for a while, he said, as a member of the human race and Master's disciple, everything must be in the interests of the human race. You must put the interests of our master and disciple first. There's no reason for me to be friends with Yuan Ko. However, if you can find the value of these Pikachu, then maybe Master can consider letting them go. Gohan said lightly, Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. Lu Shihua kowtowed continuously. Don't thank me so quickly. You only have an hour. If you can't find the value of these Pikachu in an hour, then Master will still have to kill all these Pikachu. Moreover, Master will have you kill all these Pikachu personally. As a future Emperor Sword Wielder, if you don't even have a little bit of ruthlessness, how can you be an Emperor Sword Wielder? Yes, Master. Lu Shihua knew that this was the limit of what she could fight for, so she immediately said without hesitation, Master, since these Pikachu can discharge electricity, then we can bring them back to use as generators. Stupid. Gohan rolled his eyes at Lu Shihua. One large nuclear battery of mine can charge the entire Pikachu group. In other words, the entire Pikachu group's electricity output is far less than one large nuclear battery of mine. What a joke. Lu Shihua's face showed an expression of shame. She did not think too much in a moment of desperation, so she suggested this method that was indeed a joke. However, Lu Shihua did not give up. After thinking for a while, she immediately said, These Pikachu are very cute. Why don't we introduce them as pets to our Yuzhong city? It will definitely make a lot of lonely people happy. Yes, if these Pikachu are unhappy, it would be even more fun to electrocute those lonely people. Gohan said impatiently. Lu Shihua was speechless again. Lu Shihua thought of another 7 or 8 ideas, but none of them were reliable. The hour was getting shorter and shorter. Lu Shihua, who could not think of anything, could only walk to the side of the Pikachu group and silently watch these cute little elves cry. Pikachu. A Pikachu saw Lu Shihua appear and immediately jumped over in a friendly manner. It raised its yellow hands and handed a half-eaten apple to Lu Shihua. Pika. Seeing how this Pikachu waved its hands It was obvious that it wanted to share this delicious apple with Lu Shihua. Wah! Lu Shihua hugged this Pikachu in her arms and began to cry loudly. This Pikachu instantly showed a pained expression. Obviously, Lu Shihua's posture made the poor Pikachu feel like it was about to suffocate. I'm useless. I can't convince my master to let you live. Lu Shihua cried loudly. Hurry up and go. Hurry up and run, one by one. Don't ever meet us humans again. Hurry up and run. Lu Shihua shouted loudly, hoping that these Pikachu would escape. Unfortunately, the Pikachu did not understand what Lu Shihua was saying. Seeing Lu Shihua crying, they thought that Lu Shihua must be very sad. So, they gradually gathered around Lu Shihua and used a crisp and cute Pika to comfort their crying friend. Why are you guys like this? Hurry up and run. When Lu Shihua saw that the Pikachu did not escape, but instead gathered together, he immediately cried even more sorrowfully. He muttered, it's all my fault. If I didn't come looking for you guys to train your movement skills, you guys wouldn't have met Master and you guys wouldn't have died. It's all mine. At this point, Lu Shihua suddenly froze. He then stood up abruptly and leaped into the air. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed a few hundred meters. He knelt in front of Gahan and said excitedly, Master, your disciple has thought of how to use these Pikachu. Chapter 1364. Pikachu, Pikachu, Pikachu. In a lush forest, a few humans walked in front, while a group of scattered Pikachu followed behind them, constantly speaking to Lu Shihua in a language that no one could understand. These Pikachu were seeing Lu Shihua off. Since they set off in the afternoon, Lu Shihua and the others had already walked dozens of kilometers, while these Pikachu had been following behind Lu Shihua. Pairs of reluctant little eyes looked at Lu Shihua and Gahan, calling out, Pikachu, only hoping that Gahan and the others could stay and live with them. Of course, this was impossible. Lu Shihua had hoped for these Pikachu to go back quickly countless times, and even tried to chase them away, but these Pikachu still refused to leave. The ancient saying of sending someone off for 100 miles was nothing more than this. These Pikachu are quite affectionate and loyal, not at all blaming me for letting them live. Looking at these affectionate Pikachu, Gahan couldn't help but praise. Master, hearing Gahan say this, tears flowed down from the corners of Lu Shihua's eyes again. Useless thing. Crying all day. What kind of person are you? Gahan knocked on Lu Shihua's head and said faintly, since you said that you want to use these Pikachu as training and cultivation tools for the future disciples of our Hongjun bloodline, then you will bring your disciples back here sooner or later, and you will meet them sooner or later. Yes, this was the method Lu Shihua thought of using these Pikachu. Lu Shihua told Gahan that since these Pikachu were so effective in training, then when Lu Shihua took in disciples in the future and inherited Gahan's swordsmanship, he could also use these Pikachu as training tools. Lu Shihua would bring his disciples to find these Pikachu in the future, and then, just like how Gahan trained Lu Shihua, he would use these Pikachu to train Lu Shihua's disciples, thus ensuring that the sword bearers of Gahan's bloodline could continue to be strong. This reason successfully convinced Guhan. In the end, Guhan also decided to let these Pikachu go. As for these Pikachu who didn't know that they had just taken a trip to the gates of hell, after discovering that Guhan's people had left, they immediately chased after them energetically, and there was even such a touching scene of them sending each other off 100 miles away. However, 100 miles was only 100 miles. When the emerald green trees' trunks gradually turned black, and the leaves all withered, leaving only dead trees, the Pikachu suddenly blocked in front of Gohan's group. They shook their heads desperately, and their faces emitted electricity as if they were stopping Gohan's group from moving forward. Master, is there any danger in front? Seeing this scene, Lu Shihua also realized that something was wrong with the situation. If I'm not wrong, the 100 Ghost Forest is in front. Guhan's face also revealed a somewhat cautious expression. The 100 Ghost Forest was an area discovered by humans more than 700 years ago. It was so large that it almost occupied the area of a province. It was said that there were millions of ghosts and undead creatures hiding in this forest. Even the legendary Yama Palace and underworld prison were built in this forest. It was known as a dangerous place for humans, and it was said that there was even a flood-level Yuan-ko living in it. There were also records of immortal sword-tier sword-bearers being lost in this forest. In short, this was a rather dangerous area. Ordinary teams of sword-bearers did not dare to enter this area, and slightly stronger teams only dared to move around the periphery. Only teams with immortal sword-tier sword-bearers dared to go deep into this area, but they did not dare to provoke the flood-level Yuan-ko in the deepest part of the Hundred Ghost Forest. And because this flood-level Yuan-ko never left the Hundred Ghost Forest, humans are not interested in spending energy and taking a huge risk to kill this flood-level Yuan-ko. Guhan was the strongest immortal sword-tier sword-bearer, so of course he would not care about the Hundred Ghost Forest. Instead, this Hundred Ghost Forest had become the best training target in Gohan's eyes. Let's go. Let's go in. Gohan urged Lu Shihua. Although he was a little reluctant to leave these cute Pikachu, Lu Shihua still obediently walked into the depths of the Hundred Ghost Forest. And these Pikachu seemed to be extremely afraid of this Hundred Ghost Forest, so they did not dare to continue following behind Lu Shihua. They could only stand where they were, watching Lu Shihua and the others go further and further away with tears and sorrow in their small eyes. Goodbye. Lu Shihua kept waving back, saying goodbye to these Pikachu until they could no longer see those cute yellow figures. After a few weeks, a team of sword-bearers from Yinjing City also appeared near the Pikachu camp. When they saw these Pikachu again, they finally heaved a long sigh of relief. Ever since they entered this area, they had not seen any Yuan-ko for 5 days. They almost thought that there was some huge change or danger in the surroundings, so they felt jealous and uneasy. Now that they saw these Pikachu living together happily, they finally felt relieved. When they were ready to work together to eliminate these more than 200 Pikachu, they suddenly realized that these Pikachu did not seem to be afraid of humans anymore. After seeing them appear, not only did they not attack, but they even took the initiative to give a lot of fruits to the humans. Then they happily returned to the camp. At the same time, on the most conspicuous rock on the outskirts of the camp, someone had stuck a notice board into the ground. Upon closer inspection, this notice board was actually made of dimensional alloy. This notice board only had a very simple sentence. These Pikachu are all my pets. Whoever dares to harm them will be punished by me. And below this sentence was the signature of Sword Immortal Hong Jun. There is also a unique logo of Sword Immortal Hong Jun, specially designed by the Sword Committee. At the same time, the entire team also discovered a lot of human garbage in the surroundings. They even discovered that a large nuclear battery had been modified into a charging device placed in the center of the camp. Those Pikachu were happily dancing around this charging device. Captain, what should we do? Should we still destroy these Pikachu? A teammate asked with some fear. Destroy what? Can't you see that they're all Sword Immortal Hong Jun's pets? If Sword Immortal Hong Jun finds out that we are the ones who did it, he will teach you a lesson. The captain smiled bitterly and shook his head. Forget it. You've seen it for yourself. These Pikachu have indeed been trained by Sword Immortal Hong Jun to become human friends. They didn't take the initiative to attack us either. Since that's the case, let them live happily here. Also, I finally figured out why there's no Yuan-ko around here. I'm afraid they have all been killed by Sword Immortal Hong Jun. Let's leave this place and go in another direction. Otherwise, we will still not meet a single Yuan-ko. As the captain spoke, he led these team members to find another direction and continue moving forward. Disciple, do you know what type of Yuan-ko is the most dangerous Yuan-ko as a swordsman? Gohan smiled and asked Lu Shihua, who was beside him. I don't know. Lu Shihua shook his head. It is the type of ghost Yuan-ko. Gohan said calmly. Ghosts do not have a physical body. They are purely in the form of electromagnetic waves. We cannot see ghosts with our naked eyes. We can only rely on our own senses to determine the location of the ghost. This is undoubtedly an extremely dangerous thing for a swordsman. If we're not careful, the ghost will invade our body and eventually wear away our soul. Therefore, ghosts are the most dangerous yuan-ko to a swordsman. Disciple has learned something, Lu Shihua said with heartfelt admiration. That's good. This will be your next training. Actually, after a month of training, your swordsmanship and movement technique have reached a certain level. However, as a sword master, your swordsmanship instincts are still lacking. As a sword master, your spiritual sense is still lacking. When you can forget your swordsmanship and only rely on your spiritual sense and instincts to fight, that's when you will have reached the most basic requirement of your master. Go! You can use these ghosts as your opponents. These ghosts cannot be seen with the naked eye. You can only use your spiritual sense to sense them. When you kill all the ghosts in the 100-ghost forest, your spiritual sense will barely pass. Gohan said, Yes, master. Lu Shihua accepted the task that Gohan gave her very straightforwardly. How about this? Master will give you a little help. In our surroundings, there are 5 flood dragon-level ghosts spying on you. They are preparing to melt your soul and take over your body. Now, use your spiritual sense to sense and see if you can find their location. Gohan said with a smile. I understand. Lu Shihua nodded and closed her eyes. She wanted to sense the location of the 5 ghosts. Although Lu Shihua did sense the 5 gloomy energies in the surroundings immediately, and these 5 energies did have killing intent towards him, it was just a feeling. Lu Shihua couldn't find these 5 energies at all. Time passed minute by minute. Just as Lu Shihua was feeling extremely anxious, a voice suddenly sounded in Lu Shihua's ear. Sister, something is attacking you from your left rear. Okay. The moment the voice fell, the 8-winged seraphim sword in Lu Shihua's hand turned into a lightning-like sword light. Immediately, a resentful scream came from the river. The figure of a female ghost suddenly appeared at the place where the sword light had just landed. After a distortion in the space, it was sucked back by the dimensional vortex in the sky. Lu Shihua killed this flood dragon-level ghost with 1 sword strike. Although the ghost was indeed a kind of yuan-ko with very little vitality and defense, Lu Shihua's attack had reached a quite terrifying level. Otherwise, it would be impossible for yuan-ko, who is only 1 realm lower than Lu Shihua, to be killed by Lu Shihua so easily. However, at this time, Gohan's attention was not on Lu Shihua's rather stunning sword. Instead, he looked at Lu Yin, who was beside him, with some surprise. This little guy's natural spiritual sense was actually so terrifying. It was even stronger than Lu Shihua, who was at the spirit sword level. This was definitely not something that an ordinary person could do. Chapter 1365. Over the past few days, the ghosts and undead in the 100-ghost forest had fallen into a state of extreme fear. A team of sword-bearers had entered the 100-ghost forest, and one of the female sword-bearers seemed to have a deep hatred for the ghosts. She had actively sought out ghosts to fight and kill. The ghosts did not panic. Every year, there would be sword-bearers who entered the 100-ghost forest. In the end, they were either chased away by the ghosts, sent to the ultimate paradise, or possessed by the ghosts and turned into zombies, specters, and puppets. Therefore, when they discovered that a team of swordsmen had appeared again, the ghosts did not panic. Instead, they were quite happy. They felt that it was time for them to have their own bodies. In the beginning, it was just as the ghosts hoped. They relied on their ability to appear and disappear mysteriously to gain the upper hand. They defeated the female swordsman several times. However, every time the female swordsman was about to die, a stronger male swordsman would attack and forcibly snatch the prey from their hands. Fortunately, the stronger male swordsman only saved people and did not harm the ghosts. Otherwise, the ghosts would be too scared to attack. However, as the days passed, the ghosts were shocked to find that even if the stronger male swordsman did not attack, they would be too scared to attack. This was because the female swordsmen were growing at a crazy speed. In the beginning, they could not even detect the ghost location. Now, they could sense the ghost location even if they closed their eyes. What was more terrifying was that the female swordsman had terrifying swordsmanship. The additional damage from her sword was frighteningly high. Even a dragon-level ghost could not withstand 3 strikes from her sword. This caused the ghost to fall into a great panic. They went from actively hunting the female swordsman to fleeing frantically. Unfortunately, the female swordsmen were much faster than them. In the end, they could only die under the female swordsman's sword. Therefore, in the end, the ghosts had no choice but to gather around the ghost mother, hoping to rely on her power to protect themselves. As the name suggested, the ghost mother was the mother of all ghosts. In other words, she was the source of all ghosts. She was an extremely special existence in the ghost forest. She could gather the power of these ghosts and explode with even more powerful combat power. Generally speaking, if an ominous mother gathered enough ghosts, it could even unleash the power of a nether-rank Yuan-ko. Therefore, when the ghosts gathered around Mother Harpy, they regained their confidence and sense of security. They felt that they could stand against the detestable sword wielder. In the past, there had been records of powerful human sword wielders entering the 100 Ghost Forest and slaughtering the ghosts. However, as long as the specters gathered around the ghost mother, everything would be fine. She would be able to easily kill the ghost mother. It seemed that this was indeed the case. After gathering a large number of ghosts, Mother Haridi, who had the strength of a top meteor Yuan-ko, encountered the female sword wielder, and it didn't take long for her to defeat her. In the end, it was the male sword wielder who managed to escape with his life. Otherwise, that hateful woman would have died at Mother Haridi's hands. After that, Haridi began to hunt down the female swordsman. The hunt went on for more than 10 days. Although the female swordsman was defeated every time, the female swordsman always managed to escape when she was about to be released from purgatory. After a few hours, the female swordsman would come back to life with full health. Worse still, Mother Haridi discovered that her opponent was becoming stronger and stronger. Her swordsmanship was also becoming more and more terrifying. At first, Mother Haridi only needed to use 40% of her strength to defeat her opponent. However, after more than 10 days, she had to use all of her strength to defeat her opponent. Therefore, Mother Haridi began to feel afraid. She gave up on hunting down the female sword wielder and began to dodge her opponent's attacks. However, the female sword wielder refused to let Ghost Mother go, and the tables were turned. Now, Ghost Mother was running away, and the female sword wielder was chasing after her. In the end, Ghost Mother had no choice but to fight to the death with the female sword wielder. Both sides brought out their most powerful attacks, and it was a battle to the death. However, this was only the beginning. When Mother Haridi died, she shared her experience with the other 11 Mother Harpies in the 100 Ghost Forest. The entire 100 Ghost Forest was divided into 12 areas, and each area was guarded by 12 different Mother Harpies. Once a Mother Haridi died, the news of her death would immediately be notified to the Mother Harpies in the other areas. At the same time, the related memories would be shared with the other Mother Harpies. After learning that one of their companions had been killed, the Mother Harpies became extremely furious, especially the Mother Harpies in the 2 surrounding areas. They immediately gathered the ghosts in their areas and charged at the enemy, wanting to use their advantage in numbers to kill the enemy. Of course, the female swordsman was no match for the 2 harpies. Thus, another cycle began. The female swordsman kept fighting with the 2 harpies. Although she kept losing, she was always saved at the crucial moment. When she appeared again, her strength had increased to a certain extent. This caused the 2 harpies to be extremely afraid. After obtaining the Mother Harpy's memories, the 2 Mother Harpies naturally couldn't allow their opponent to continue killing them. As such, they immediately called for their friends and called the other 2 Mother Harpies over. As such, another cycle began. When they discovered that 4 Mother Harpies were no match for the female sword wielder, 4 Mother Harpies became 6 Mother Harpies, then 8 Mother Harpies. In the end, even when 11 Mother Harpies fought together, they still couldn't defeat their opponent. Instead, their opponent grew stronger and stronger. She was many times stronger than before. It had been 2 months since the first mother harpies died. However, if 11 mother harpies couldn't defeat their opponent, what should they do? It should be noted that the combined strength of 11 mother harpies was equivalent to a top-tier meteor warrior, Yuan Ko. As such, the mother harpies could only look deeper into the 100 Ghost Forest and call for help from their backers. In human imagination, the core area of the 100 Ghost Forest must be an extremely terrifying place. It was filled with all kinds of corpses and skulls. It was a place that could make one's hair stand on end. However, reality always exceeded human expectations. In fact, the scene in the depths of 100 Ghost Forest was completely different. The originally blackened and charred trees were once again lush and green. The vitality of the entire forest had also been completely restored. Furthermore, the vitality of the forest was much greater than that of the forest outside. Most importantly, there were many temples in the depths of the jungle. These temples were all magnificent, and they were not in the traditional Huaxia style. Instead, they were like the traditional Indian style of brick and stone temples. During this period, there were countless shaved monks and kasayas walking between the temples. They looked gentle and peaceful, as if the light of Buddha was universal. In short, in the core area of the 100 Ghost Forest, there was no ghost energy at all. Instead, it was like a paradise that came from a Buddha. At the center of all the temples, there was a tall temple that was the most eye-catching. This temple was hundreds of meters tall and covered an area of more than 100 hectares. When people saw this temple, they couldn't help but want to kneel on the ground and sincerely offer their faith. Buddha, your disciple has something to report. In a magnificent temple, a monk in a yellow kasaya said to a being who was sitting high on a futon. His body was glowing with golden light, and he looked like a real Buddha. What's the matter? The Buddha's magnificent voice, which seemed to be able to penetrate people's hearts, rang throughout the hall. The mother harpies outside the forest of Kasayapa have reported to me that an extremely powerful sword wielder of the spiritual sword level has appeared in the forest of Kasayapa. He has been massacring the ghosts in the forest of Kasayapa. One of the mother harpies has already returned to the pure land of ultimate bliss. Now, the remaining 11 mother harpies are also in a difficult battle. Therefore, they are asking for the mercy of the Buddha to send help. You, the monk in the yellow kasaya, said in a low voice. This is a little strange. Such a powerful sword wielder hasn't come to my forest of Kasayapa for more than a decade. The Buddha's voice was silent for a while. Fine. Arrange for the 24 Guardian Vajra to release these evil guests from purgatory. Yes. The disciple accepted the order and left. The Guardian Vajra was a natural guardian with a Vajra scepter. It was also one of the core forces of the Buddhist sect. Each Guardian Vajra had the strength of a nether-level Yuan Ko, and the 24 Guardian Vajra together was almost equivalent to a small part of a universe-level Yuan Ko. With such a force joining the siege against the female sword wielder, it was a matter of twice the result with half the effort. It was just that the Guardian Vajra, who represented justice and mercy, was mixed up with the gloomy mother harpies. There was an inexplicable funny feeling. No matter what, the effect of the Guardian Vajra joining the battle was very obvious. Moreover, the Guardian Vajra had secretly hidden in the void in advance. When the ghost and the female sword wielder fought fiercely, these Guardian Vajra suddenly jumped out and launched a shameful sneak attack on the female sword wielder, severely injuring her in one fell swoop. Half of her body was smashed by the Guardian Vajra's Vajra scepter. When she was finally rescued by the male sword wielder, she was almost dead. Chapter 1366. Although the Guardian Vajras thought that the woman would definitely die, heaven did not follow their wishes, nor did it follow the wishes of Buddha. The next day, when the Guardian Vajra was ready to return to Buddha, the woman who should have been dead suddenly jumped out again. What followed was another confrontation that lasted for 2 months. In the end, the 24 Guardian Vajras and the 11 Harpies gathered together, trembling, and stayed vigilant every day. They did not know when the terrifying woman would jump out and attack them. But at this time, they were no longer the woman's opponent. They could barely maintain a state of self-defense. So in the end, they had no choice but to look at the core of the ghost forest and send a message to the great Buddha for help. Therefore, after these 2 months, the monk in the yellow kasaya rushed back again. But this time, before he could speak, Buddha took the initiative to ask, "How is it? Are my guardian Vajras back?" "No," the monk in the yellow kasaya said nervously. "Buddha, things are bad. The 24 guardian Vajras arranged by me are also trapped in the kasaya forest. They sent a report saying that their lives are in danger. If we don't send help, they may return to the Western Paradise. This sword wielder actually has such strength. No matter. 18 arhats, quickly come and see me." The high and mighty Gautama Buddha was extremely calm. With a slight movement of his golden fingers, 18 golden arhats instantly appeared beside him. The aura of these golden arhats was extremely strong, and each of them had the strength of a meteor stage Yuan Ko. Facing such 18 opponents, even an immortal sword wielder would have to retreat temporarily. "You guys go and send those evil guests to the reborn in paradise," Ancestral Buddha said indifferently. The 18 golden arhats immediately obeyed his orders and left. Ancestral Buddha then immersed himself in the world of Buddhist Dharma again. Gautama Buddha did not doubt the victory at all. The power that he had sent out was equivalent to the power of 3 immortal sword-tier sword-bearers. There was no reason for such a power to be defeated by a spiritual sword-tier sword-bearer. "Master, your disciple is useless. No matter what, your disciple is no match for those 18 arhats. Your disciple can't beat them. Master, please punish your disciple," Lu Shihua said to Gahan in despair. A week ago, Lu Shihua's expression was still full of hope. Ever since they entered the 100 Ghost Forest, Gahan had Lu Shihua fight head-on, who said that it was extremely dangerous. The number of times Lu Shihua had encountered life and death situations had already exceeded 3 digits. If it were any other sword-bearer, they would have died long ago. But in the end, Gahan managed to throw Lu Shihua off. More importantly, every night, Gahan would explain to Lu Shihua the battles that happened during the day. He told Lu Shihua how he should correct and adjust his swordsmanship so that he could defeat his opponent. With the daily life and death battle experience and the guidance of an absolute master, Lu Shihua's swordsmanship began to improve rapidly in a way that even she did not expect. In the end, Lu Shihua had completely mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven taught by Gahan. Only with the power of a spiritual sword wielder could she beat the 24 guardian Vajras and the 11 harpy mothers, who were equivalent to the strength of an immortal sword wielder. But when the 18 arhats appeared, Lu Shihua was no longer a match for them. Every time she went up, she would be beaten up by the 18 arhats. If it was not for the fact that Gahan had enough emperor blood, Lu Shihua was afraid that she would have to have hundreds of limbs to fight back. In fact, when she first fought against the 11 harpy mothers and the 24 guardian Vajras, Lu Shihua was in a state of defeat. But it was different at that time. After every battle, Lu Shihua could feel her swordsmanship improving. Lu Shihua knew that as long as she continued to improve, sooner or later, she would be able to defeat these difficult opponents. So Lu Shihua never felt despair. But it was different this time. After a week of fighting, although Lu Shihua's swordsmanship had improved, the improvement had become very small. It was so small that it was negligible. Unless Lu Shihua was given more than 10 years, she had no confidence that she could defeat the 18 arhats. So, Lu Shihua fell into extreme despair and apologized to Gahan. "It's not your fault. You've done very well." Gahan touched Lu Shihua's head and comforted her gently. In fact, Lu Shihua's current situation was within Gahan's expectations. Gahan had long known that it was impossible for Lu Shihua to defeat the 18 arhats. The reason was very simple. It was because the upper limit of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven was there. Although the 9 swords of mysterious heaven was an extremely powerful set of swordsmanship, its upper limit was the level of an immortal sword wielder. In the hands of an immortal sword wielder, it might still be a very powerful set of swordsmanship. However, if a spirit sword wielder wanted to rely on the 9 swords of mysterious heaven to defeat 2 or 3 immortal sword wielder, this was something that even Guhan could not do. The 9 swords of mysterious heaven was like a gun. If held in the hands of an ordinary human, it could kill in all directions and countless people of the same kind. But if held in the hands of a mutant like Hulk, the bullet would become a tool to scratch an itch. Only by replacing it with a more lethal missile could it help Hulk kill more powerful opponents. Not to mention that the 9 swords of mysterious heaven was originally not very suitable for Lu Shihua's own personality. What was really suitable for Lu Shihua was the mysterious lady of the 9th heaven sword technique at the peak of Kunlun. It was impossible for Lu Shihua to practice the 9 swords of mysterious heaven to the peak. In fact, this kind of thing had also happened to Gohan. During the battle with the immortal sword wielder in the 8-city assembly in the game, Gohan had already discovered that the 9 swords of mysterious heaven was not enough. In the 8 Academy assembly, this kind of thing became more obvious, and when he went to Shanghai Pass, the drawbacks of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven completely broke out. Faced with such a predicament, Guhan's solution was to create his own sword art, Chaos Sword Art. Starting from the first move, Chaos Sky Splitter, the second move, Chaos Flying Immortal, the third move, Chaos Stars, the fourth move, Chaos Golden Lotus, the fifth move, Chaos Legend, and the sixth move, Chaos Unification, were all powerful sword arts that Guhan had created based on his lifetime of battles. It was also by relying on the emergence of the Chaos Sword technique that Gohan was able to defeat the immortal sword wielder as a spirit sword wielder, and even the 100-level Yuan Ko. At this time, the 9 swords of mysterious heaven had become very useless for Gohan, unless he was dealing with some extremely weak Yuan Ko. Gohan would only use his 9 swords of mysterious heaven when he disdained to use the Chaos Sword technique. Otherwise, when facing the real masters, Gohan would directly use the Chaos Sword technique to fight the enemy. However, Guhan could also see that although Lu Shihua had completely mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven under his coercion, his own talent and swordsmanship was far beyond that of an ordinary person, but it was far from being as amazing as Guhan himself. If Lu Shihua wanted to spontaneously create his own swordsmanship, he would need to accumulate too little experience. After all, Lu Shihua's entire life had been advancing according to the path that Guhan had planned. When Gohan issued an order, Lu Shihua immediately went to carry it out. He did not have enough subjective initiative. Just like this training, all the steps of Lu Shihua were carried out under Gohan's arrangement. In this way, Lu Shihua's swordsmanship did improve, but he never thought about how he should do it. This was obviously a huge shortcoming for creating a new swordsmanship that belonged to him. What was worse was that Lu Shihua, who grew up through this kind of training, might be able to become a strong fighter, but if he wanted to take over Gohan's career and become the appointed successor of Gohan in the future, this was far from enough. Lu Shihua must have his own ideas and wisdom. Therefore, Guhan patted Lu Shihua's head and said, "Good disciple, Master will give you 3 months of time. In these 3 months, you must cleanly kill off these things like Hariti, Vajra, Arhat, and the like. However, during this period, I won't give you any advice or help. You'll have to rely on your own judgment and plans to act. Whether you fight head-on, lure the tiger away from the mountain, or split up and disband, it's all up to your own will. But you must remember one thing, and that is that you absolutely cannot die. If you die at the hands of an opponent, then perhaps Master will save you, but your trial this time will be over. Master will immediately take you back to Yuzhong City, and from then on, Master will not teach you anything else. It will be considered that you have successfully graduated from Master's tutelage. Do you understand what Master is saying?" "Yes, Master." Lu Shihua nodded blankly. She had to rely on her own intelligence and strength to defeat these seemingly invincible opponents. This was something that Lu Shihua had never thought of doing. Lu Shihua could only feel her head aching. For the next week, Lu Shihua was immersed in thinking about how to use wisdom to defeat the opponents. After the opponents found out that Lu Shihua had not appeared for a week, they obviously let down their guard. After all, the 18 Arhats were too powerful. They took it for granted that their strength had completely made Lu Shihua despair and that he had already left the Ghost Forest. Therefore, the 18 Arhats, who thought highly of themselves and had never suffered a loss in Lu Shihua's hands, no longer adhered to the strategic policy of huddling together. Instead, they split up to search for Lu Shihua. As a result, on the first day after they separated, one of the 18 Arhats died under Lu Shihua's sneak attack. When the other Arhats received the news and rushed over, Lu Shihua had already disappeared without a trace. Obviously, Lu Shihua had found a way to win. Chapter 1367. Holy **T. Even the 18 Arhats could not help but curse at this time. In the past month, the 18 Arhats had become 12 Arhats. 6 of them had returned to the dimensional vortex forever. The opponent this time was extremely difficult to deal with, and his sense of smell was extremely sharp. The 18 Arhats were certain that the other party was still in the 100 Ghost Forest, but they could not find the other party's exact location no matter what. The 18 Arhats had clearly sent out many ghosts with excellent concealment skills to carry out a carpet search of the entire 100 Ghost Forest, but the other party's spiritual sense was terrifyingly sharp. He could always avoid the ghost search at the most appropriate time. If he really could not avoid it, the opponent would launch a sudden attack and eliminate all the ghosts before reinforcements arrived, disappearing without a trace again. At this time, the best solution seemed to be to let the 18 Arhats stay in different locations in the Ghost Forest. When the ghosts discovered the opponent, they would immediately rush over and stall the opponent until the main force arrived. At first, the 18 Arhats did this and succeeded in catching the opponent's tail several times. However, when the rest of the Arhats arrived, the Arhat in charge of stalling the opponent was already killed in an extremely short period of time. That was how 6 of the 18 Arhats were finished. After that, the 18 Arhats no longer dared to play tricks like splitting up. They gathered all their forces together, deeply afraid that they would give the opponent a chance to split up and attack. This way, although the Arhats' lives were guaranteed, it was completely impossible to catch the slippery opponent. The two sides had been in a stalemate for 2 weeks. Master, Taming Dragon, I've made a huge discovery. Just as the remaining 12 Arhats were feeling frustrated about how to deal with the troublesome opponent, a guardian suddenly rushed over. What's the big discovery? Arhat, Taming Dragon, asked in surprise. Just now, a ghost under the ogres reported that she found a very well-hidden human camp in the forest of Cassiopeia. There's an ordinary person living in the camp. The ordinary person is 70 to 80% similar to the female sword-bearer. It's very likely that he's the female sword-bearer's relative. If we can capture this ordinary person, we can definitely force the female sword-bearer to come out and fight us. The guardian said excitedly. There's such a thing. The Taming Dragon Arhat was delighted, but then he asked in confusion, that's not right. Don't ordinary humans hide in their base cities and don't dare to come out? Ordinary humans have never appeared in the Cassiopeia forest. Why would ordinary humans appear in our Cassiopeia forest? Is this information reliable? Absolutely reliable. The omniscient mother's subordinates noticed that the swordwoman would appear in that area every day when they were tracking her. She felt that something important was hidden there, so she sent a large number of omniscient mother subordinates to search the area. In the end, she discovered that the swordswoman had hollowed out the trunk of a 1,000-year-old tree and built a temporary camp inside it. The swordswoman's relatives were hiding inside the tree. If we hadn't searched that area, we wouldn't have found the swordswoman's temporary camp. All right, Arhat, Taming Dragon, clenched his fists excitedly. At the same time, he began to gather all the Arhats, Guardian Vajra, and Ghost Mother, and began to carefully surround the tree hole from all directions. The whole process was very smooth. The Arhats did not spend any energy and successfully surrounded the temporary camp. Do it. Capture him alive. The taming dragon Arhut waved his hand, and everyone rushed towards the tree hole. In just 2 or 3 moves, the whole ancient tree was shaved off, revealing Lu Yin with a surprised look on his face. Arhut, taming dragon, nodded and said to himself with a smile, I can't be wrong. Judging by his appearance, he must be the swordswoman's younger brother. Arhut, taming dragon, nodded and said to himself with a smile, since the other party was an ordinary person who could not even trust a chicken, Arhut, taming dragon, was not on guard at all. Who are you? What are you doing? Lu Yin looked at Arhut, taming dragon, and asked in horror. Amiba. I am Arhut, taming dragon, the head of the 18 Arhats under Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Today, please come with us. Arhut, taming dragon, stretched out his hand and was about to grab the terrified Lu Yin. However, as soon as Arhut, taming dragon's palm touched the corner of Lu Yin's clothes, a deadly sword aura suddenly surged out from Arhut, taming dragon's lower body. The taming dragon Arhut was caught off guard and was directly stabbed in the key of his crotch by this deadly sword chi. Every Arhut has their own Arhut golden body. This Arhut golden body is like a sword wielder's personal shield. Unless the energy of the Arhut golden body is exhausted, it is impossible to hurt an Arhut. However, it is different from the sword wielder's personal shield. The sword wielder's personal shield has no weakness and can easily protect the entire body of the sword wielder. However, the Arhut golden body has its own Achilles heel. Although this Achilles heel is very small, it is the most vulnerable part of an Arhut's body. Its defense strength is not even comparable to that of an ordinary dragon rank Yuan Ko. It is the biggest weakness of an Arhut. An Arhut taming dragon's Achilles heel is his own little brother. At the same time, the sword aura that pierced into Arhut taming dragon's Achilles heel was not an ordinary sword aura, but the fiercest move of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, Sword Dipper. Sword Dipper is a sword move whose power cannot be estimated by conventional means, because the power of this move depends on how much sword aura the user instills into the sword move. The more sword aura instills, the more powerful the sword move will be. As an assassination move that Lu Shihua has carefully prepared, it is also the move that Lu Shihua is most proficient in. This move has poured a lot of Lu Shihua's sword aura into it, and it can be said to be a move that puts the opponent on the brink of death. If this move failed, then the only thing that awaited Lu Shihua was failure. Fortunately, Lu Shihua succeeded. This sword successfully pierced into Arhut taming dragon's body, and then all the sword aura exploded from within Arhut taming dragon's body. Even the strongest of the 18 Arhats, Arhut taming dragon, could not withstand such a terrifying damage from Sword Dipper. However, after this sword pierced into Arhut taming dragon's body, Arhut taming dragon did not seem to suffer much damage. His body was still intact, and his body was emitting a dazzling golden light. Amiba, may I ask, benefactor, what is your name? Arhut taming dragon suddenly put his palms together and asked Lu Shihua. My name is Lu Shihua. Lu Shihua replied faintly. Amiba, I didn't expect benefactor to use your little brother as bait. It was Arhut taming dragon's miscalculation. However, Arhut taming dragon is very curious. How did benefactor know where my Achilles heel is? Even among the 18 Arhats, there are only a few who know where my Achilles heel is. Arhut taming dragon asked curiously. It was your good brother, Arhut taming tiger, who told me. Lu Shihua glanced at Arhut taming dragon. Arhut taming tiger was one of the 6 Arhats who died in Lu Shihua's hands. He wanted to use this information in exchange for his life. Unfortunately, I lied to him. What do you think? Do you hate him for betraying you? No. Arhut taming dragon shook his head. He actually wanted to return to Western Paradise very much. He just wanted to help me. After saying this, Arhut taming dragon's body began to crack like a piece of cracked land. Finally, it turned into pieces of minced meat that fell to the ground and was absorbed by the dimensional vortex that appeared. Everyone quickly attack. There is not much sword essence left in this woman's body. Come, avenge taming dragon. Seeing their good friend return to Western paradise, the surrounding Arhats suddenly burst into flames of anger. At the same time, they also realized that after using this move, there would not be much sword essence left in Lu Shihua's body. This was their best chance to kill Lu Shihua. Let's go. Lu Shihua's expression suddenly changed. He immediately picked up his brother, Lu Yin, and wanted to rush out of the encirclement. However, these Arhats and Vajras who had finally caught Lu Shihua were not willing to let him go just like that. In an instant, a fierce chase began between the two sides. Because Lu Shihua was carrying Lu Yin, his speed of escape was far slower than the speed of his opponent's pursuit. The situation that Lu Shihua was facing became extremely dangerous. Brother, run! Lu Shihua led Lu Yin into a jungle. In the next second, two maglev motorcycles rushed out of the bushes. Lu Yin was riding one of them and quickly fled to the periphery of the ghost forest, while Lu Shihua was speeding in a completely different direction. Obviously, this was the escape route that Lu Shihua had planned long ago. He hid the two maglev motorcycles that were already in a state of activation in a bush so that Lu Yin and himself could escape using the two maglev motorcycles as soon as possible. What should we do? Seeing the two opponents escape separately, the pursuing Arhats hesitated for a moment. They did not know whether they should focus on chasing Lu Shihua or split up to chase after Lu Yin. After a brief hesitation, the Arhats quickly made a decision. Split up and chase after her. The reason was simple. In previous battles, the Arhats had deeply experienced the strength and slyness of this woman named Lu Shihua. Without Lu Yin, who was a burden, they might let her escape again. Therefore, the Arhats finally decided to split up to chase after Lu Yin, who was relatively easy to catch. Even if they did not catch up to Lu Shihua, they could use Lu Shihua's brother to lure Lu Shihua into a trap. Chapter 1368. The maglev motorcycle that Lu Yin was riding was so fast that even Guardian Vajra and Mother Haridi might not be able to catch up with it. Only an Arhat could catch up with it. So, in the end, the cloth bag Arhat separated from the crowd and chased after the maglev motorcycle, while the rest of the Arhats continued to chase after Lu Shihua's maglev motorcycle. Although Lu Shihua's maglev motorcycle had reached its maximum speed, it was still difficult to escape from the Arhats' pursuit. Finally, 10 minutes later, the angry Arhats caught up with her. A shockwave from the Arhats completely destroyed the maglev motorcycle that Lu Shihua was riding. Lu Shihua fell heavily to the ground like a sack and lay there motionless. Bright red blood quickly soaked a small area of the ground. We finally caught her. The ear-digging Arhats that surrounded Lu Shihua were both excited and sad. In order to catch this cunning opponent, 7 Arhats had died. Now, there were only 11 Arhats left. This made the 18 Arhats, who were usually as close as brothers, very sad. Everyone, be careful. This woman is full of tricks. Maybe she has some conspiracy waiting for us. Let's use the dragnet to capture her. The pondering Arhat said. The rest of the Arhats nodded at the same time with lingering fear in their hearts. Countless golden lights shot out from their hands, intertwining in the air to form a large net made of these golden lights. Then the net wrapped around Lasihua, who was lying on the ground, and pulled her body into the air. After seeing Lu Shihua's condition, the pondering Arhat was the first to feel that something was wrong and said, "Strange. Why is this woman covered in blood from head to toe? Such a small injury should have no effect on her." This was because Lu Shihua's body seemed to be too fragile. Just falling off the maglev motorcycle had seriously injured her. She was covered in blood from head to toe. This was completely different from the woman who had fought them relentlessly for a month. Look, there's something wrong with this woman's face. Why do I feel like she looks like a man? Another happy Arhat also noticed that something was wrong and said. At the same time, more and more strange things about Lu Shihua were also discovered by these Arhats. This is a man, not a woman. The pondering Arhat finally reacted and exclaimed loudly, "Wait, I'm sure that the one we've been fighting for the past few months is a woman. How did it suddenly turn into a man? Said the ear-digging Arhut in shock. No, if that guy is really a woman, and the one we're catching is a man, doesn't that mean that the cloth bag Arhut is chasing the guy is? The pondering Arhut's expression suddenly changed. Only then did he realize that the other party had probably switched clothes the moment they went into the grass. The one who was wearing Lu Yin's clothes was Lu Shihua, and the one in front of him was actually Lu Yin. If that was really the case, then Cloth Bag Arhut, who had chased after Lu Yin all by himself, should be facing the terrifying Lu Shihua instead. With this realization, the Arhuts immediately carried Lu Yin and prepared to rescue the Cloth Bag Arhut. But it was too late. When they were about to set off, everyone's golden Arhuts felt a violent fluctuation, as if something important had left them. At this moment, all the Arhuts had realized that the Cloth Bag Arhut had probably died in the hands of Lu Shihua. This guy actually used her own brother as bait to trick us into splitting up. Is she still human? Does she not want her brother's life anymore? Said the ear-digging Arhut with a face full of grief and indignation. No, she has already understood one thing. That is, we will never hurt her biological brother. Instead, we will try our best to save her brother's life, because we will use her brother's life to force her to show herself. The pondering Arhut assumed a contemplative posture and said, No, I don't care that much. I want to use her brother's life to avenge Xianglong and Cloth Bag. The most reckless Arhut, the ear-digging Arhut, suddenly took out his weapon and smashed it towards Lu Yin's head. It was so fast that even the pondering Arhut, who was holding Lu Yin, did not have time to react. Lu Yin's head was about to be smashed to pieces by the ear-digging Arhut. Suddenly, a void door opened in the air, and a crystal-clear, jade-like hand reached out from it. It grabbed Lu Yin's body into the void in time, and finally disappeared without a trace. There's an immortal sword wielder. The Arhuts were stunned for a while before they came to their senses. It was an immortal sword-rank sword wielder who had opened the door to the void and rescued Lu Yin. No wonder this woman dared to throw her brother to us. So she knew that an immortal sword wielder would come to save him. Said the ear-digging Arhut, gritting his teeth. That's not important. What's important is that there's an immortal sword wielder hiding behind her all this time. Then we're in danger. If that immortal sword wielder attacks again, with only 10 of us left, we will definitely not be a match for the two of them. We must retreat immediately. The pondering Arhut thought of the opponent that might be hiding behind this, and said worriedly, There's no need to panic. Among the 18 Arhuts, the long-browed Arhut, who was known for his wisdom, said, If there really was an immortal sword wielder behind her, I'm afraid we would already be dead. She wouldn't have to waste so much effort to tangle with us. I've heard that humans have an ability called the Void Hand, which can rescue people from thousands of miles away through the Void Door. I'm afraid we've encountered such a Void Hand. Then what do you mean, long-browed? Do we still want to be in a stalemate with them? Asked the pondering Arhut. No, the long-browed Arhut shook his head cautiously. Since we've discovered the existence of an immortal sword wielder, we can't continue in this stalemate. Immediately report what happened here to the Buddha, and let the Buddha decide our next course of action. What a good disciple. She actually used me, her master. Several dozen kilometers away from the battlefield, Guhan fed Lu Yin 1/20th of a drop of sovereign blood to him before tossing him onto a sandy ground. At the same time, he shook his head in annoyance as he muttered to himself, You're too weak. And the truth was just as Gahan had said. He had been used by his good disciple. The reason why Lu Shihua dared to let Lu Yin help him lure away the main force of the Arhuts was because he knew that at this time, Gahan must be hiding in the void, observing the entire situation. And before the trial began, Gahan also promised Lu Shihua that he would do his best to protect Lu Yin's life so that Lu Shihua could train without any worries. It was precisely because of Guhan's guarantee that Lu Shihua knew that his brother would never encounter any fatal danger. At the last moment, Gahan would definitely save Lu Yin. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't this Lu Shihua using Gahan? Not bad. Not bad. My good disciple, this is my good disciple. However, Gahan, who had been used, did not have an angry expression. On the contrary, he was a little happy, because in Gahan's view, this was a huge improvement for Lu Shihua. Although Lu Shihua's personality was very good, she had the temperament of a Virgin Mary in her bones. This did not mean that she was a Virgin Mary, but a true Virgin Mary. Therefore, she had many misgivings when doing many things. It was very difficult for such a person to achieve the ability required to freeze the cold. Now that Lu Shihua had begun to learn to use Gahan, and even his own brother, it showed that Lu Shihua's heart had gradually begun to let go of these things. The nature of a saint was gradually weakening. Lu Shihua believed that it would not be long before Lu Shihua could become a qualified leader. This was what Gahan was happy about. There are only 10 of the 18 Arhats left, and only 5 of the 11 Harpies are left. There are not many Guardian Vajras left. Now, the strength of the opponent can no longer form a crushing force against Lu Shihua. Now, Lu Shihua no longer needs to cower and hide. It seems that it doesn't even need 3 months. In just a little more than a month, Lu Shihua can complete my task. After thinking about the existing strength of both sides, Gahan said with a sigh. While Gahan was thinking about these things, Lu Yin, who had been casually thrown aside by Gahan, suddenly let out a series of painful moans. This made Gahan feel extremely strange, because Gahan had just fed Lu Yin 1/20th of a drop of imperial blood. For ordinary humans, this was a special medicine that was more effective than any medical treatment. At this time, Lu Yin should be feeling extremely comfortable, and all the injured parts should be recovering quickly. However, when Gahan looked at Lu Yin, he saw that Lu Yin was constantly howling in pain. His forehead was covered with sweat, and a large amount of blood was gushing out of the already bloody wounds. Admittedly, the situation in front of him was something that Gahan had not expected at all. If the blood continued to flow like this, Lu Yin would probably die on the spot, and even Gahan would not be able to stop it. This was a situation that Gahan absolutely could not accept, because Gahan had already guaranteed Lu Shihua's safety. Not to mention the fact that Lu Yin's death would cause Gahan to be unable to fulfill his promise. When Lu Shihua found out about his brother's death, he would fall into a terrible situation. Gahan believed that Lu Shihua would not blame him, his master. On the other hand, Lu Shihua would blame himself and take all the blame on himself. This was because Lu Shihua had decided to use his brother as bait. If Lu Yin died, Lu Shihua would have an undeniable responsibility, and Lu Shihua would definitely live in his own mental nightmare for the rest of his life. The disciple that Gahan had painstakingly trained would probably be completely crippled. Damn, you can't die. Gahan patted Lu Yin's face hard, and then dripped a drop of imperial blood into Lu Yin's mouth. Although Gahan had vaguely guessed that it was the imperial blood that had caused all this. However, now that the med bay had lost its function, the only thing that Gahan could use to heal Lu Yin was the imperial blood. Chapter 1369. Just how much sovereign blood does this guy's body consume? After Gahan fed a bottle of 100 drops of sovereign blood into Lu Yin's stomach, although Lu Yin's injuries had improved, he was still bleeding continuously. 200 drops, 300 drops, 400 drops. When Gahan fed all of the 100 cubic centimeters of sovereign blood into Lu Yin's mouth, all of Lu Yin's wounds were completely healed, and his aura gradually calmed down. However, at the same time, Lu Yin's mouth began to change. The tooth on the leftmost side of his upper jaw began to grow rapidly, and soon exceeded the size of a normal tooth, protruding out of his lips. This crazy tooth grew to a length of 1 meter, much longer than an elephant's tusk, before finally stopping growing. At the same time, Lu Yin slowly opened his eyes, and just as he was about to say something, his body was pierced by his own huge tooth, and the pain caused Lu Yin's hair to stand on end. Sir Gahan, I. After discovering that his teeth had changed, Lu Yin was extremely terrified and did not dare to open and close his mouth again. He could only communicate with Gahan through the barely distinguishable sounds coming from his throat. I don't know. Gahan shook his head, then gently stroked Lu Yin's ivory-like tooth and said in surprise, "Strange, the feel of your tooth is completely different from a normal tooth. Rather than saying it feels like a tooth, it feels more like a sword's blade." Woo-woo, I don't want to. Lu Yin panicked and immediately stretched out his hands to touch the tooth. In the end, a miraculous thing happened again. When Lu Yin's hands touched the tooth, Lu Yin did not use any strength at all, and the tooth fell off by itself. The tooth that fell off began to slowly change in Lu Yin's hands, and finally, after more than 10 seconds, it turned into a curved crescent sword. What happened? How did my tooth turn into a sword? Lu Yin asked in confusion as he looked at the sword in his hand. However, when he held the hilt, Lu Yin could clearly feel a bloodline connection. This sword had indeed grown out of his body. Could it be? Upon seeing this scene, Gahan's eyes lit up slightly. He immediately grabbed Lu Shihua's wrist and probed his sword essence into Lu Yin's body at the same time. He then nodded slightly and said, "It seems like I guessed right. Your body already has your own sword essence, and a number of these sword essences has reached more than 100 quarks. Congratulations, Lu Yin. You become an ancient sword-tier swordsman." "What? I become a sword-bearer?" Lu Yin was completely stunned. He looked at Gahan in disbelief and could not help but ask Gahan again, "Lord Gahan, you're not joking with me, right? Have I really become a sword-bearer?" "There's no mistake. I can already feel the existence of the purple mansion and the sword mark in your body. You've already become a real sword wielder." Gahan confirmed once again, "I become a sword wielder." Ha ha ha, I become a sword wielder. After a short moment of silence, Lu Yin jumped up from the ground like a madman. He waved the curved sword in his hand like a madman, constantly repeating the phrase, "I've become a sword wielder." Ever since they met Gahan, the Lu siblings' lives had become completely different. They had originally been poor children living in the slums, but now they had become upper-class people living on Mount Emperor. More importantly, Lu Yin's sister, Lu Shihua, had become the personal disciple of Yuzhong City's sword pavilion master. In the end, Lu Shihua even took over the position of Yuzhong City's sword pavilion master with unprecedented status. She became one of the two noblest people in Yuzhong City. It could be said that Lu Yin had ascended to the heavens in a single step. In the blink of an eye, he had become the son of an influential family in Yuzhong City. However, Lu Yin had not been happy all these years. Although he had a sister who loved him and tried her best to protect him, Lu Yin had been sentenced to death on the path of a sword wielder. This was because Lu Yin's natural sword essence was only a pitiful little bit. This meant that unless Lu Yin was like Gahan, who could obtain acquired sword essence through the game, Lu Yin would never be able to meet the requirement of 100 quarks of sword essence to become a sword wielder. However, there was only one Gahan in the world. Of course, Lu Yin could not replicate Gahan's legend. Therefore, in these 3 years, Lu Yin had never been happy. He was constantly thinking about how to become a real sword wielder. This was especially so when Lu Yin had followed Lu Shihua and Gu Han to participate in this special training. He had seen his sister's strength undergo an earth-shattering change in just a few months, and the jealousy in his heart had become even more intense. Lu Yin had once sworn to the heavens that if he could become a sword-bearer, he would pay any price that Lu Yin had to pay. Therefore, when Lu Yin heard from Gohan that he had become a sword wielder, he became extremely crazy. This was completely understandable. "I'm afraid it's not a good thing for this child to become a sword wielder." Guhan frowned as he looked at Lu Yin, who seemed to have gone mad, and said with a serious expression. From Lu Yin's current behavior, it could be seen that Lu Yin's heart was too greedy and utilitarian. If one day he could not control his desires, who knew what would happen to Lu Yin in the end? More importantly, the current Gahan did not understand Lu Yin's condition at all. He had never heard of a human's teeth that could grow more than a meter long and turn into a curved sword. This was definitely not something that a real human could do. Lu Yin and Lu Shihua's background was probably not simple. Gahan even suspected that Lu Yin was not a real sword wielder, even though he did have sword essence in his body. Lu Yin, sit here, Gahan said to the crazy Lu Yin in a strict tone. When he heard Gahan's stern voice, Lu Yin immediately calmed down. His crazy expression calmed down, and he sat next to Gahan in shame. He lowered his head and said to Gahan, Lord Gahan, please forgive me. I was too impulsive. That's no problem. I can completely understand your feelings. This is nothing, Gahan said lightly. But I think you know in your heart that your current situation is very strange. You don't seem like a real sword wielder. For the sake of your future and safety, I have some things to ask you. Lord Gahan, please ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know. When he heard Gahan say this, Lu Yin's forehead immediately became covered with a few drops of sweat. He also realized that his sword wielder was too strange. He had never heard of a sword wielder's sword lady growing out of their own teeth. Let me ask you, can your consciousness enter your Zifu and see the sword scars in your Zifu? When Gahan's voice fell, Lu Yin immediately entered into a meditative state. After a while, he opened his eyes and nodded to Gahan. Yes, I can see my own sword scars. They are floating in my Zifu. That's good. Gahan asked Lu Yin some other questions. They were all about the specific characteristics of a sword wielder. In the end, Lu Yin's answers were the same. Lu Yin had all the characteristics of a normal sword wielder. From the looks of it, Lu Yin was indeed a true sword wielder. Last question. Gahan narrowed his eyes and asked, Can you release your sword lady now? Can you change from sword form to sword lady form? I'll try. Lu Yin nodded excitedly. Under Gahan's guidance, he tried to release his sword maiden, but the situation was different from that of a normal sword wielder. No matter how Lu Yin tried to command it, the sword maiden in his hand could not be released. It just sat quietly in Lu Yin's hand like a normal sword. Lord Gahan, why is it like this? Am I still a real sword wielder? Lu Yin asked Gahan in fear. What he was most worried about was hearing from Gahan that he was not a real sword wielder. You should still be a sword wielder. However, because your sword lady grew out of your own body, she does not have her own soul. When you can inject your sword lady with her own soul, you can become a real sword wielder, Gahan said with a smile. Although Gahan's words seemed to make sense, it was actually just an answer that Gahan made up. However, Lu Yin obviously took Gahan's words seriously. He began to seriously think about how to inject a soul into his sword lady. You don't need to think about this problem. It is not a big problem that your sword lady does not have a soul. You could be like your sister and me, become a sword wielder, and use your own body to fight. This way, it will not be a problem whether the sword lady can be released or not. Yes, Lord Gahan, Lu Yin understands. Lu Yin nodded obediently. However, from his hesitant eyes, it could be seen that Lu Yin had not given up on the idea of adding a soul to his sword lady. Buddha has spoken. He wants us to return to the Bukong temple immediately and not stay in the forest of Kasayapa any longer. The long-browed Arhat said to the other Arhats. The other Arhats immediately heaved a long sigh of relief. In the absence of 8 Arhats, the remaining 10 Arhats were definitely not a match for that woman. If they continued to stay in the forest of Kasayapa, they were afraid that only death would await them. However, because they did not have the approval of Buddha, they did not have the courage to return to the Bukong temple. Now that the ancestral Buddha had spoken, they could finally return safely. However, at this time, these happy Arhats did not know that this was only one step on the road to death. Chapter 1370. That night, the rest of the Guardian Vajras and Arhats directly left all the Haridi behind and sneaked back to the core area of the forest of Kasayapa. The reason why they had to sneak around at night was that they were afraid that their whereabouts would be exposed to the terrible woman. But in the end, their worries became reality. Although everyone was on high alert during the escape, when a piercingly cold sword chi suddenly pierced out from a tree and killed the ear-digging Arhat, the careful and hidden escape involuntarily turned into a mad dash. Lu Shihua alone launched a merciless chase against a total of more than 20 opponents. The weaker Guardian Vajras were the first to be unlucky and became sacrifices under Lu Shihua's sword. When all the Guardian Vajras returned to Elysium, it was the turn of the remaining 9 Arhats. The 9 Arhats also realized that simply escaping would probably lead to death, so in the end, the 9 Arhats gathered together again and no longer ran away. After killing all the Guardian Vajras, Lu Shihua probably felt that the remaining Arhats could no longer pose a threat to him, so he simply walked out of the depths of the forest. The two sides saw each other's faces clearly under the moonlight. Without any nonsense, the battle between the two sides began in such a simple and fierce manner. On one side, there were the 9 Arhats who cooperated with each other like brothers. On the other side, there was Lu Shihua, who was silent and full of murderous intent. This was a battle that didn't seem exciting at all, because both sides had directly used their trump cards, and every single one of them was a life-risking skill. Apart from the stench of blood that permeated the entire forest, there was nothing else worthy of praise. As time went by, both sides had reached the limit of their abilities. Lu Shihua's personal shield had less than 20% energy left. However, the Arhats were not much better. 3 Arhats had died under Lu Shihua's sword, and the remaining 6 Arhats were dyed bright red with blood. Venerable ones, it seems that there is no way for us to return to the Bukong Temple, but we can't disgrace the name of Buddha in front of the demons. Let's fight to the death. The remaining 6 Arhats understood in their hearts that their side had already been defeated. The 6 of them were definitely no match for Lu Shihua. But at this time, the Arhats had already let go of all their other worries and planned to fight to the death. Seeing the attitude of the 6 Arhats, Lu Shihua tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. He knew that the final moment of this training had arrived. As long as he could successfully withstand the attacks of the remaining 6 Arhats, he would be able to complete the task given to him by his master. Just as the final battle was about to begin, something strange happened. A gigantic void gate suddenly opened up in the sky. A figure that looked like a Buddha walked out of the void gate, shining with a golden light that illuminated the entire night sky as bright as day. "Greetings, Buddha!" Seeing the appearance of this Buddha statue, the remaining 6 Arhats immediately knelt in front of it excitedly and called it Buddha. "Lady Benefactor, since my Arhats have already escaped, why are you still chasing after them? Why don't you follow this poor monk back and study the Dharma painstakingly, so that you can achieve the Mahayana Buddhahood in the future?" Buddha said in a magnificent voice. "Let's go." The moment he saw this Buddha appear, Lu Shihua felt a power that could only be felt from Yuan Ko at the Great Desolate Realm. Lu Shihua didn't want to talk nonsense with this Buddha at all. She immediately turned around and left because she knew very well that she was no match for this Buddha. "Lady Benefactor, you have hurt my Buddhist Vajra Arhat. You are already plagued with karma. Why don't you follow this poor monk back and let this poor monk purify you?" As soon as the Buddha's voice fell, 8 Buddha's palms grabbed towards Lu Shihua from all directions like bulldozers. Lu Shihua gritted her teeth and sent out a sword energy, wanting to shatter one of the Buddha's palms. However, Lu Shihua's invincible sword energy, which even an Arhat couldn't withstand, had no effect on the Buddha's palms. It was as if it had hit the hardest object in the world. It didn't even leave a trace on the Buddha's palms. "Master!" Seeing this scene, Lu Shihua had no other choice but to shout helplessly, "Who is bullying my precious disciple?" As Lu Shihua shouted, another void gate opened up. The 8 Buddha's palms grabbed Lu Shihua and pulled her into the void. After a while, the void gate opened up in front of the Buddha. Lu Shihua, who had been acting almighty just now, was now like an obedient kitten. She followed behind a man and walked out of the void. "Lady Benefactor, you finally showed up." Seeing Gahan appear, the Buddha's face didn't show any surprise. It was obvious that he had already expected Gahan's existence. "I wouldn't dare. I've been bothering you in your hall for the past few days." Gahan said, "It doesn't matter. It's just that you've made me unable to sleep for the past few days. I can't even free myself to save my poor disciples. And I have to settle this score. Buddha's originally compassionate face instantly turned sorrowful and bitter. After hearing the conversation between the two, the Arhats, who had been reduced from 18 to 6, finally understood why the Buddha hadn't come to their rescue after fighting so hard for so long. It turned out that the Buddha was also restrained by the other party in the Bukong temple. That's fine. Since the juniors are done with their duels, let's two old fellows fight. Gahan didn't care. He didn't take the Buddha's threat seriously at all, even though the other party was a flood-level Yuan Ko. When Gahan was at the spiritual sword level, he had killed 3 flood-level Yuan Ko. Now that he was at the immortal sword level, killing another flood level was no big deal. What a joke. You're just a junior. You've only lived for more than 20 years. This poor monk has lived for God, knows how many tens of thousands of years. What kind of old guy are you? The Buddha said disdainfully. Lu Shihua and the remaining 6 Arhats watched the duel between the 2 top powerhouses in the sky nervously. Although the Arhats could already see that the man in the sky was just an immortal sword wielder, it was reasonable to say that he could not be compared to the Gautama Buddha. But for some reason, the aura that the 6 Arhats felt from this man was no less than their great Buddha. I say, Guhan, can you be a little more shameless? It's not you who's been facing this old, bald donkey for the past few days. It's us 3 unlucky sisters. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out in the air. The void was open again. 3 tall and beautiful sword maidens jumped out of the void. The one in the lead glared at Guhan with dissatisfaction. You're all my sword maidens. It's the same if you're there as if I'm there. There's no difference. Guhan said with a smile. These 3 sisters were naturally the celestial slaying, celestial ending, and celestial trapping sisters. The appearance of the celestial slaying sisters successfully broke the tense atmosphere. The moment the celestial slaying sisters appeared, the Buddha fixed his gaze on the celestial slaying sisters. The Buddha's bronze-like face showed an expression of disbelief. He sized up the celestial slaying sisters again and again. Celestial ending, who had the worst temper, was extremely annoyed. She opened her mouth and scolded the Buddha. Ksitigarbha, you don't even recognize me. Do you have to stare me like that? Ummapa. So it really is celestial ending. This little monk pays his respects. The glittering golden Buddha instantly lost his imposing manner and spoke to the celestial exterminating sword in a courteous manner. Is that how you greet me? Who are you trying to scare with your golden bodhisattva body? Celestial ending sword said unhappily. The high and mighty Buddha hesitated for a moment. His golden body, which was several times larger than Ultraman's, began to shrink rapidly. Finally, it turned into a bald man wearing a simple black kasaya. This is the true body of the Buddha. The 6 Arhats on the ground looked at each other. This was the first time in their lives that they had seen the true body of the Buddha they believed in. Buddha my ass. He's just a bodhisattva. Since when does a bodhisattva have the guts to call himself the Buddha? Aren't you afraid that old guy Tathagata will slap you to death if he hears you? Celestial Ending Sword mocked the 6 Arhats. Celestial Ending Sword is right. Buddha is just a name that my disciples made up. I have always been the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva of Buddhism. The position of the Buddha is not something that I can covet, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said with a smile. So you are Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. This Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had a bit of fame among Yuan Ko. He had once followed Vairocana to participate in the Alps War. However, following the defeat of Mahavairocana, this Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva disappeared without a trace and never appeared in front of the world again. Who would have thought that he was hiding in this 100-ghost forest and became the master of this forest? It is indeed me. After the war 100 years ago, I was seriously injured and could not return to Spirited Mountain. I could only recuperate in this Kasayapa forest. 100-ghost forest. It has been a few hundred years. I wonder how Spirited Mountain is doing now. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said with a sigh. However, looking at how he moved freely and looked like Ling, Gahan did not think that he was seriously injured at all. It was obvious that this Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva must have seen that Vairocana was heavily injured and could no longer maintain his position as the Buddha. So he secretly hid in the 100 Ghost Forest and secretly called himself the Buddha to satisfy his craving. Since these are all friends of Goddess Jueshian, I won't argue with them. You can all come to my Bukong temple and stay there for a few days. I can be a good host, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said with a face full of smiles. The tense atmosphere from before was nowhere to be found. Chapter 1371. No need. Gohan wanted to reject Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's invitation, but Extinguish Immortal Sword beat him to it. All right, it's settled then. We haven't seen each other for so many years. Let's see what kind of good territory you've prepared for yourself. Thus, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva brought the remaining 6 Arhats, while Gohan brought Lu Shihua and Lu Yin. They stepped into the void together and headed towards the Bukong temple. What are you doing? While Extinguish Immortal Sword was speaking, Gohan didn't interrupt it. When the two of them entered the void again, Gohan asked Extinguish Immortal Sword in a low voice. You've forgotten about our little sister, the Immortal Slaughtering Sword. She needs enough chaotic energy to recover. Right now, the only people in this world who can use chaotic energy are the Jade Emperor and Vairocana. Now, I can get information about Vairocana from Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, Extinguish Immortal Sword explained. Gohan nodded, agreeing with Extinguish Immortal Sword's explanation. 10 minutes later, they left the void again and found themselves in front of the magnificent Bukong temple. Even Extinguish Immortal Sword couldn't help but praise it. Ksitigarbha, your Bukong temple is only a little smaller than the Mahavira Hall of Spiritual Mountain. It seems like you really plan to become a Buddha? Not at all. I wouldn't dare to have such thoughts. The master of Buddhism is still Vairocana. I'm just building a place for him to stay. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said with a serious face, as if he really planned to do so. This hypocritical guy, after he said nonsense like hell is not empty and he won't become a Buddha, I knew he was the most hypocritical monk in the world, Extinguish Immortal Sword said with a cold smile. Extinguish Immortal Sword Lady, why do you say that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is hypocritical? I think this is a very grand wish. If one doesn't have great willpower and wisdom, why would he give up the temptation of becoming a Buddha and purify the spirits in hell? Lu Shihua asked, puzzled. You idiot, although Buddha is the highest position in Buddhism, it doesn't belong to those who are capable. Not even the strongest monk can become a Buddha. There are 108 Buddhas in Buddhism. Other than the top 10, the rest are not even comparable to Guanyin, Samantabhadra, Manjushri, and Ksitigarbha, although Bodhisattva Buddhahood is a level lower than Buddha Buddhahood, Jueshian explained with a cold smile. Why is this happening? Lu Shihua muttered in a low voice. Could it be that there are internal strife within the Buddhist sects, and that Buddha Tathagata is deliberately suppressing these 4 great bodhisattvas? That's not it. Vairocana can't wait for the 4 great bodhisattvas to be promoted to Buddha Buddhahood. That way, he can relax, but being a Buddha isn't that easy. It's like the investiture of the gods. Once they become Buddhas, their true spirits will be controlled by Buddha Tathagata, the ancestor of all Buddhas. None of these 4 great bodhisattvas can escape Tathagata's grasp. On the other hand, because this Bodhisattva Buddhahood was personally conferred by the receiving sage, their true spirits can be controlled by the receiving sage. The receiving sage can't wait for more experts to appear under him. He's not like Vairocana, who worries about the 4 great bodhisattvas usurping his position, so he doesn't restrict the 4 great bodhisattvas at all. That's why the Buddha Buddhahood doesn't bring any benefits, and it will also make one subject to others. Unless the 4 great bodhisattvas were kicked in the head by a donkey, they wouldn't want to become Buddhas, Extinguish Immortal Sword explained. If that's the case, why do you say that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is a hypocritical villain? There's nothing hypocritical about him doing this. Lu Shihua was still a little puzzled. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is the weakest among the four great bodhisattvas, but he's the most ambitious one. Before the other three bodhisattvas joined Buddhism, they were all Vairocana's senior and junior brothers, and they were of equal status. Even after joining Buddhism, the other three bodhisattvas relied on the support of the primeval Lord of Heaven, so they could face Vairocana head-on. They said they wouldn't become Buddhas, and Vairocana couldn't do anything to them. Only Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was born in the far west. He didn't have any backing, so he didn't dare to openly defy Vairocana's will. However, his ambition was the greatest. He actually learned from the six sages and made a great vow not to become Buddhas until hell is empty. The six paths of reincarnation were originally firmly controlled by the 10 Yama kings, but after Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva made such a great vow, the two sages Zhuanti and Jin took the opportunity to force Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva into the ground so that they could control the vital power of the six paths of reincarnation. With the support of the two sages Zhuanti and Jin, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva naturally had the capital to fight against Vairocana, and Vairocana didn't dare to force Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to become Buddhas. At the end of the day, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva made a great vow not to become Buddhas until hell is empty, not to release souls from purgatory, but to preserve a chance for himself to go further. In fact, he was always coveting the position of Vairocana, and even the positions of the two sages Zhuanti and Jin. If this great vow really succeeded, he might really be able to become a sage. That's why I said that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is one of the most hypocritical monks in the world, full of his own schemes. He has never really considered the souls of the dead in hell, but he still accepted the offerings of human beings for thousands of years. He's simply shameless. Extinguish immortal sword scolded. But isn't this a great vow that's impossible to achieve? As long as there are human deaths, souls will enter the underworld. Then, the underworld will never be empty, and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's great vow will never be realized. Lu Shihua said, "No, there's a way." Gohan, who had been listening by the side, suddenly interrupted. As long as all the living things on earth are completely destroyed and all the ghosts in hell are destroyed, wouldn't hell be empty? Hearing Gohan's words, Lu Shihua couldn't help but shiver. This Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was really too scary. I didn't know it was Lady Immortal Vanquishing Sword, Lady Immortal Extinguishing Sword, and Lady Immortal Entrapping Sword. This humble monk didn't welcome you from afar and was impolite. I hope the three of you can forgive me. This humble monk is in a peaceful Buddhist land, and there's no such thing as alcohol. I'll use this cup of tea to apologize to you. As soon as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva finished speaking, over 10 cups of tea tore through the void and appeared in front of everyone present. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva raised the teacup in his hand in a rather worldly manner and nodded at the others. Ksitigarbha, the three of us didn't come here to drink a cup of tea from you. There's no need to say anything about apologizing. It was my master's disciple who killed your people. If you want to apologize, I'm afraid the three of us should be the ones doing it. As soon as Extinguish Immortal Sword finished speaking, Immortal Vanquishing Sword and Immortal Entrapping Sword raised their teacups at the same time, apologizing to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. We wouldn't dare. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva hurriedly waved his hand, but his expression quickly changed. His eyes revealed great curiosity as he looked at Gohan and asked, "Please forgive this humble monk for asking too much, but the few of you just addressed this sword-bearer as master. Could it be that this benefactor is your sword-bearer?" "That's right." Immortal Vanquishing Sword nodded. "He is our sword-bearer." "I see. This humble monk has been disrespectful. This benefactor has an imposing appearance and an extraordinary bearing. At such a young age, he has become an immortal sword-bearer. In the future, he can look forward to becoming an emperor sword-bearer. It seems that benefactor will definitely become a leader of humanity in the future, an existence comparable to Kinzu and heaven-covering Jindy. Let this humble monk offer a toast to this benefactor." This Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had become more and more worldly. No wonder Immortal Extinguishing Sword said that he was the most hypocritical monk. You're wrong about him. He's not someone Kinzu, who failed at the last moment, can compare to. Immortal Extinguishing Sword said calmly after hearing Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's words. What do you mean? Don't tell me. Your Majesties, you haven't given up. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was shocked and said in a panic, We have never given up. Immortal Vanquishing Sword said calmly. It seems that your Majesties have placed their hopes on this benefactor. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva looked deeply at Gahan. In the end, he could not help but shake his head and said, Your Majesties, do you really think that this benefactor can be compared to Lord Kinzu? You don't believe me, do you? Immortal Extinguishing Sword's lips suddenly revealed a smile. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. What is his current title? This. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva looked at Gahan suspiciously. Gahan smiled and replied calmly. I am Sword Immortal Hongjun, clang. The teacup in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's hand fell to the ground. The 6 arhats behind Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva were all stunned. They had never seen Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva lose his composure like this. This Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was not bad. He answered all the Majesty's questions without holding anything back. It seems that there is hope for Master to repair the Immortal Slaughtering Sword. After leaving the Bukong Temple, Lu Shihua immediately congratulated Gahan. After Gahan revealed his title, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was stunned for a full 10 seconds before he shouted Amitabha Buddha and returned to normal. Then, Immortal Vanquishing Sword told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva about the Immortal Slaughtering Sword, hoping that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva could give them some pointers and tell them where Vairocana was and if he still had the ability to condense the power of chaos to repair the Immortal Slaughtering Sword. Chapter 1372. When Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva learned that the 4 immortal slaying swords intended to continue fighting against Tongtian and reshape the entire world, he immediately became extremely excited. He repeatedly expressed his willingness to stand on the side of the 4 immortal slaying swords and Guhan. He would do his best to help Guhan strengthen himself, and at the same time, help the immortal slaying sword lady return. Thus, Ksitigarbha told the 4 swords that Vairocana had indeed been seriously injured after the battle in the Alps and had been hiding in Mount Numinous to recuperate. However, Vairocana knew that he had made many enemies in the past. Many of the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas in Mount Numinous had died in battle. If the enemies of the past, such as the Heavenly Court, attacked Mount Numinous, it would be impossible for Vairocana to resist. Therefore, Mahavairocana immediately hid the spiritual mountain in the dimensional space, making it constantly float in the dimensional space. Its position could change at any time. So even if the Heavenly Court wanted to seek revenge, they wouldn't be able to find the location of the spiritual mountain. Of course, there was a huge drawback. Mount Numinous and the Buddhist sect had completely lost their influence on this world. Ksitigarbha, who had escaped, had to take the opportunity to gather the Buddhist power that had come to this world after Mount Numinous disappeared, becoming the only remaining force of the Buddhist sect in this world. Therefore, the key to repairing the immortal slaughtering sword was to find Mount Numinous hidden in the dimensional space. As long as he could find Mount Numinous, he would be able to find Vairocana. At the same time, Ksitigarbha guaranteed to Gahan that Vairocana did not want this world to end. Therefore, as long as he explained his intentions clearly, Vairocana would definitely help him repair Immortal Slaughtering Sword. In the end, Ksitigarbha told Gahan the rules and methods to find Mount Numinous in the dimensional space. He said that as long as Gahan followed his methods, he would definitely be able to find Mount Numinous. Therefore, Lu Shihua congratulated Gahan in the end, believing that Gahan would definitely be able to repair Immortal Slaughtering Sword. Shihua, you're still too naive. Do you really think Ksitigarbha is that kind? Hearing Lu Shihua's congratulations, Gahan's face revealed a trace of a sneer. This Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's great ambition is to not become a Buddha until hell is empty. And the best way to realize this great ambition is to destroy the whole world. He was born to stand on Tongtian's side. How could he decide to help us so easily? I'm afraid he wants to kill us. What a hypocrite. It seems like he's not telling the truth. You can't believe a single word. Lu Shihua naturally believed in his master's words, so he immediately gritted his teeth and criticized. You're wrong on this point again. A complete lie won't deceive anyone. Only a lie that's half true and half false can deceive people. Therefore, I believe that this Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva must have told us half the truth and the other half lies. Gohan smiled. Lu Shihua, what do you think the earthquake Bodhisattva said is true? Which words are false? Lu Shihua lowered his head and thought for a while. His eyes lit up as he said, it's true that Spirited Mountain is now hidden in the dimensional space, but the method he told us to find Spirited Mountain is false. If we really find Spirited Mountain according to his method, I'm afraid we'll be lost in the dimensional space like Kinzu back then. You finally made some progress. Gohan nodded with a smile and touched Lu Shihua's head. But you still said something wrong. It's not that we'll be lost in the dimensional space, but that I, your master, will be lost in the dimensional space. Master, what do you mean? Aren't you going to take your disciple to find Spirited Mountain? Lu Shihua said with some inexplicable panic. Of course I can't take you there. I'm teaching you like this so that when I leave this world, you can protect Yuzhong City and the things I've left behind in this world. By the way, I left you a gift of the highest position in this world. Gohan touched Lu Shihua's head and said, What? Master, are you really going to leave this world and find Spirited Mountain hidden in the dimensional space? Lu Shihua did not care about the highest position in the world at all. She only cared about her master's next move and where her master was going. No, my goal is not Spirited Mountain. I'm still millions of quarks away from becoming an Emperor sword wielder. Repairing the Celestial Culling Sword now doesn't mean much to me, and there's no need to find Spirited Mountain now, Gohan said with a smile. Then, where are you going, Master? Lu Shihua asked in confusion. Master, I'm going to save someone. I've been waiting for this for 4 years. Now that I've finally become an immortal sword wielder, it's time to take action. Then, are you leaving now, Master? Lu Shihua's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. She threw herself into Gohan's arms and said, Master, don't go, please. Don't worry, I won't leave for the time being. You don't have 1,000,000 quarks of sword essence yet, so your cultivation isn't over yet. On this day, at the entrance of the Yin-Jing City Construction Committee headquarters building, the entire building could be said to be decorated with red flags and fluttering flags. Rows of beautiful women in slender cheongsams stood on both sides of the road. Countless sword wielders, which were rarely seen on normal days, appeared in groups at the Sword Committee headquarters. There were also countless cameras aimed at the entrance of the Sword Committee headquarters. The reason why the Sword Committee headquarters was so lively today was that it was an extremely important day. Today was the day when the chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters would be re-elected, which happened once every 5 years. It was said that the previous chairman, Sword Immortal Hao Tian, had entered a state of dying and might become an immortal at any time. Naturally, he could no longer hold the position of chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters. In that case, the Sword Committee headquarters was bound to change to a new chairman. However, all the netizens had a fairly unified answer for the result of this new chairman. The chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters had to be Long Shurjindi. The important position of the chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters had always been held by Emperor sword wielders since ancient times. Now that Hao Tian Jindi was about to become an immortal, there was only one Emperor sword wielder left, Long Shurjindi. Therefore, there would be no accident in the result of this election. It must be Long Shurjindi. Although everyone felt that there was no suspense in this result, it still could not stop people's curiosity about the election meeting of the Sword Committee headquarters. Almost all the sword wielders in Yin-Jing City who were not qualified to attend the meeting were waiting at the entrance of the Sword Committee headquarters. The vast number of ordinary people were not qualified to come here. They could only wait for the final result to be published through the television broadcast. According to the past practice, the result would be released to the public at around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. However, what was strange was that there was no result until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This made the waiting people feel anxious, but they also had a faint guess. Could it be that there would be any accident or change in the result of today's election? This meeting lasted until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Just when all the audience was waiting impatiently, the figures of a large group of people finally gradually appeared at the entrance of the Sword Committee headquarters and appeared in front of the camera. These sword bearers were all sword bearers of the immortal sword tier. They were the strongest fighting force of mankind. Apart from a few sword bearers of the immortal sword tier who had to stay in the base city due to the unusual situation near the base city, almost all sword bearers of the immortal sword tier were present in this group of people. Some careful audience members counted and found that the total number of immortal sword wielders present had reached 31. It seemed that in the past 4 years, mankind had added a lot of immortal sword wielders. Strange? Why isn't Longsure Jindy in the team? When all the sword wielders appeared on the high platform where the result was published, some sharp-eyed audience members were immediately surprised to find that Longsure Jindy did not appear in the team of sword wielders. It should be known that in all the election meetings of the Sword Committee headquarters held in human history, Emperor Sword Wielders had never been absent. At least one Emperor Sword Wielder would appear in front of the camera. At the same time, this Emperor Sword Wielder would most likely be the successor of the next chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters. But today, this 1,000-year tradition was broken. Unexpectedly, no Emperor Sword Wielder appeared in front of the camera. Could it be that there was really a change in the facts? His Majesty Longsure Jindy. Longsure Jindy didn't come to Yin Jing City this time, right? That's why he didn't appear in the meeting? Some audience members guessed. Impossible. The friend next to him immediately retorted. Don't forget that yesterday, Longsure Jindy recorded the meeting in front of everyone in Yinjing City. All the TV stations also specially broadcast this scene live. How could Longsure Jindy not participate in the meeting? I think there must have been some change in this meeting. So Longsure Jindy is not willing to appear in front of the camera. What change in the world? It actually made Longsure Jindy violate the tradition of more than 1,000 years. This audience member was even more surprised. Who knows? For all we know, there might be another Emperor Sword Wielder. Another person shrugged and said, "Hello, fellow human beings. Today, I am honored to announce to everyone that the Supreme Leader of Humanity, the 199th Chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters, has finally been elected successfully today. In the coming years, all of us humans will unite by the side of the Chairman. With the Chairman as the core, we will create a better and safer future for humanity." The great Sun Sword Immortal held the script in his hand. Without a microphone, just his strong voice was enough for everyone present and the camera to hear clearly what he was saying. However, those with sharp eyes must have noticed that at this time, there were actually a few drops of sweat on the forehead of the great Sun Sword Immortal. At the end of the nonsense on the script, when he was finally about to announce the new chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters, suddenly there was a burst of exclamation from the entire venue. Behind the great Sun Sword Immortal, a void door opened, and Longsure Jindy, with a solemn face, passed through the void door and came to the ceremonial platform. Longsure Jindy finally appeared. It seems that there is no change in the result this time. The new chairman of the Sword Committee headquarters is still His Majesty Longsure Jindy. Seeing this scene, all the audience members breathed a long sigh of relief, as if the result had been decided. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.